Good evening, all. Good evening. It's time for a bit of Midweek Geek with me, the old geek, and my guests from the start tonight. We might have others joining in a bit, but I am joined from the beginning by Mage's Musings. Hello, Mage.
Hello. Sorry, I was just muting a secondary audio source there.
And,
hello, everybody.
And this is Doof in 100 XP in BX world record. Is that your world record, Doof? Oh, it's a fair achievement, 100 XP in BX. It's
absolutely, but it is also a lie, as Particularist from the Pedantic server has beaten BX. He is the champion of the game.
Oh, he's beaten.
Wow. How many XP has he earned?
He is level 3.
Of course, in our OSE Saturday games, we do have a character within 20 XP of gaining a level, don't we, Gene? Don't we? But
is it Gene or Nosorian? Nosorian is close too.
Yeah, but I think they are both pretty close.
Yeah,
Gene's the closest.
Right.
He's got a character within about 20. He couldn't make the last session.
Right. Well, Nosorian's in the same boat,
played?
So.
What does that do?
He was asking how many sessions, but we just lost him.
How many sessions have we played? 7 or 8? But different characters have been at different
sessions. I haven't been there for all of them, and you've been doing 2 a day, so
yeah. I was going to say, Doof, we've played 7 or 8 sessions, but people have rotated different characters in and out of sessions and different DMs and what have you. I think I've played in 3 sessions, had 1 character death. 4 sessions. I've played in 4 sessions, had 1 character death. But I've played 3 different characters.
Not to brag or anything, but my OSE game last night, my guy got 4,500 XP.
We
got a big haul. It was almost a TPK, but we made it. We survived, and so I jumped to 4th level as a clerik. Ooh.
Those are the best sessions. Anyway, I'm going to say hello to everyone in chat. Daniel's been here since before we started. Hello, Daniel. It is a mighty good Wednesday for a stream, Doof. Echo, Gene, Halakar, Hawkman, Omanal, Nosorian, Grumpy Old Slan, Wayne's World, From the Hilt. From the Hilt. Greetings at the old geek, the man who puts the Y in
Wyvern.
Why indeed? Why indeed? So, before we start, let's talk about our games. Last Thursday, we played some Call of Cthulhu, and they had a big fight, and they were up against an enemy that had a 95% stealth skill and a 90% melee combat skill. And the enemy failed more times than it succeeded. In fact, it attempted to hide twice with that 95% chance of success and failed on both occasions. Yes. That was a bizarre combat. Absolutely bizarre. They won in the end. They did win in the end because they weren't rolling particularly well, but the enemy was just rolling abysmally. They met all manner of interesting people on the train as well so far. And lots of drinking was done. At the weekend, we played OSE. Gingerbeard ran the first session. I ran the second session. And hopefully a lot of fun was had by all. And on Monday, my Monday group couldn't meet face-to-face because one of them has just become a father again and has a little baby daughter about 10 days old. And the DM doesn't have any kids on the way, but has a young dog that has just had the snip. In fact, that doggy, poor little doggy, had the snip on Monday. So poor doggy wanted a bit of attention because he was feeling a bit sorry for himself. So we played online. We played Paranoia. I enjoyed the session. It didn't quite go as manic as face-to-face sessions do with 5 or 6 players, because there were only 3 players, and one of those kept having to get up to go and look after his dog, because that was the regular DM. So most of the time there was just 2 players, and they were a bit too sensible a lot of the time. I still managed to blow them up and kill them, and at least twice each. But it was all a little bit too sensible for a while. In fact, the first person to die was actually the player who was looking after his dog, turned up an hour late, and the first thing his character did killed him. He died within 30 seconds of saying hello on the server, which I thought was marvelous. It was a really good scenario. I would like to run it for some of you lot at some point, hopefully with a bigger group, though, because that group wasn't quite big enough to make it work. Right, who else has joined us? Crafting Gamer's joined us. Hello, Crafting Gamer. So let's go round and see what your games have been like. Got 15 people watching. Mage, any games over the weekend? How'd they go?
Yeah, with you.
Well, is that those the only ones, were they?
No, on the weekend. Yeah, on Monday I did my 5e game,
Right.
and last night an OSC game that I'm playing in, and,
Right.
With the aforementioned 4500 XP, which we were very happy about.
Of course.
Yes. The creature we were fighting was a large serpentine creature on a mountain of gold and gems and whatnot. Very dragon-like, though it wasn't a dragon. And we had a perfect plan, undone by, of course, the dice and the fact that we didn't realize it required magic to hurt it.
Okay.
So all of our attacks were meaningless. My light spell failed. My counterpart cleric's light spell failed. Our saving grace was we had an elf who had a wand of paralyzation. Took him 5 tries, 5 charges before it finally failed its saving throw. And then in its hoard, they found a magic sword, which they used to kill it while it was paralyzed. That was it.
Yeah. I was going to ask how you got the XP when you had no means of killing it, but there you go. There you go.
Won by luck alone. It killed half the group, mostly kobolds that were accompanying us and a couple of NPCs. One PC died, but everybody else managed to make it out. So it was a good game. It was tense. We were on the verge of rolling up new characters, and then things went our way.
Well, that's a bit like the OSC session a couple of weeks back, wasn't it? Where you got jumped by kobolds there.
Kobolds, yeah. Well, the kobolds were on our side this time. The creature was eating them while we were figuring out what to do.
Right. That was a bit like the scenario when we were playing with Gingerbeard, where we encountered a battle between hostile frogmen and presumably hostile carrion crawlers. We were like, okay, we're going to chuck stuff at the carrion crawlers because they're going to beat the hostile frogmen, and then it'll be easier to finish off the frogmen, hopefully.
Yeah, it was the first time I got to play with you as opposed to with you as a DM there.
Was it?
Yeah, I think so.
I played in maybe not when you've been there.
No, not when I've been there, but
right. Okay.
Well, we survived, so we must make a good team.
Yes.
Gingerbeard was annoyed that we kept avoiding all the really dangerous spots.
Yes, we did. I can't remember. Something kept pulling me away from the screen for little moments. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I remember you going away. I don't remember you saying what it was. I think it was your daughter or your dog.
I can't remember.
Family
remember. Anyway. Right. So, Doof, any games?
Oh yeah. This weekend I played with my secondary group.
Yeah.
Where they plod.
Do they know they're the secondary group? And does it offend them that
do.
they are the secondary group?
The other group plays twice a week, so they are the secondary group.
Right.
Where they plowed through a layer of 250 halflings, which was a hell of a session.
Are they bad guys? I mean, or are the halflings bad guys, or
both?
Both groups are bad guys.
Both are absolutely terrible.
Because it's rare that you see people taking on halflings in fights, because typically halflings are perceived as being these fat little happy-go-lucky chaps who just want to eat a big pie, smoke some pipe weed. Must be careful on the stream, and just generally be merry and jolly. So
yeah, these would be halfling goblin hybrids,
right?
Living in an underground jungle cave system. So real Vietnam vibes with the players throwing oil everywhere.
Oh,
the classic.
Oh, right.
yesterday I played with my primary group where they got absolutely wrecked by giant spiders. Because I also have a spider themed dungeon, which is, it's terrible. It's horrible. It's the worst thing.
It's also awesome, probably, as well, though.
I mean, a dungeon where everything has poison.
Yes. Oh, yeah, you've got to be really careful. Yes,
But the-
AB Mark II has mentioned Dark Sun, Cannibal Hobbits. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Best thing about Dark Sun are the Cannibal Hobbits. That's in my opinion.
It's the only good hobbits.
Anyhow, so we've all had some good gaming over the weekend, and hopefully we're going to have a good old bit of banter on stream. We do hopefully have an Elfbait joining us in a bit. I believe there's work getting in the way at the moment. And should anybody fancy popping in, you're more than welcome to do so. If I recognize your name and you promise to behave, you can come in and join and have a chat. Right. Hello, Tunker Todd. Oh, he's very happy that he's caught a live stream. Very happy.
Yes, and we're only 10 minutes in, so it's nice and early.
Yeah. Right. So we're talking about experience, and this was a Saxius chosen topic. But as we know, Saxius is having work issues at the moment. He's having to get into work very early, which means going to bed earlier, because he's had to take on managerial responsibilities. So fair play to him. He's taking his responsibilities sensibly. You expect he would do that, because that is Saxius. He'll be organized about it. He'll be properly organized about it. He'll be loading up his spreadsheets at 6:30 in the morning and enjoying it probably. So we're going to talk about experience and things like the division of experience, the earning of experience, methods of earning experience, the division of experience, the purpose of experience, and generally the concept of the experience point in the games we play. So I'm going to say right from the very beginning that I have always loved having XP for gold. I believe it sets the tone for the game. It takes the emphasis away from the characters having to beat everything up and having to be great big heroes all the time. It turns them into more grave robbers and dungeon delvers, which is what they were in the original versions of the game. The emphasis was on delving into a dungeon, getting the loot, and getting out. And it fosters a very different style of play. But before so that's my opinion. I like gold for XP. I like traditional experience points, pretty much by the book in old school games. I'm not mad keen on other methods of giving XP, and I don't really consider D&D to be D&D without the idea of the experience point. So we will come to milestones in a bit, but we'll get to that in a bit. So Mage, what are your feelings in general on experience points? Just general.
In general experience points, I prefer it simply because it's easier. I find as I get older, especially, I just want something simple and easily grasped. I have an appreciation for all the forms of XP. Like right now, most of my games, well, actually all of my games, no, not most. No, my 5th ed doesn't, but my 1st ed and OSE use the gold for XP metric.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of that game. And again, it's simpler. It does set the tone. You are treasure hunters. That's the game. You are treasure hunters, and therefore your experience is derived out of that. But that doesn't mean you don't have the freedom to say, okay, well, I'm going to award XP for something else. As an example, in a recent OSE game, they rescued a merchant. They didn't get a monetary reward. What they got was dues paid to the Merchants Guild for a year, which gives them certain bonuses and benefits. So I gave them the XP. The dues were 1,000, so I gave them 1,000 XPs if they had the gold and paid that, if that makes sense. So there's still an equivalent there, but you have the freedom to play with it. When I ran Second Ed, I used the optional individual awards. We didn't use gold for XP except for thieves. The individual awards, but they're nicely laid out. Fighters get XP per hit die of monster. Wizards get for casting spells, etc. And that worked for that system. But overall, just the basic XP, it's great because it's a good, simple metric, and you've got a number that tracks your characters. I know there's a lot of people who don't like the experience system, but you're never going to convince them.
Okay. And Doof, your general feeling on XP?
I'm completely with you guys, as I think a game system should encourage players to interact with what makes the game fun. D&D is not D&D without gold-free XP. Yes, it's the main thing that makes people play like they do in D&D. Wait, yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so it seems we're all in agreement. So when Elfbait joins us, he might argue with us, because I know.
Well, he's in the chat.
He is in the chat. Yes. He's half concentrating on work, half concentrating on what we're doing. I'm guessing you've got a work meeting. Now, Tunka Todd has asked a question here.
I was just typing a response, but now we can talk about it.
Oh, right. Well, let's discuss it before we get into the topics. What do you think of house rules that play with the gold for XP ratio? Instead of 1-for-1 played at tables where it was 100 GP for 1 XP. Okay. This was in the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, where Gygax suggested basing the XP award on the level of danger that was involved in acquiring whatever it is as a monetary value, or the monsters themselves. And certainly it's in there to say that easily acquired gold might not be worth as much XP as not so easily acquired gold. But for me, I think it depends on how the system is created. And the expectation in terms of creating the scenarios and the adventures. When you look at the framework of AD&D, for example, it's all based around the idea of that 1,500 gold to train per level, and with a couple of class exceptions, which do fall a little bit out of whack. The thief and cleric and the assassin. Generally, most classes, it fits in very nicely with the expected balance of XP awarded, in that it's expected that 70 to 75% of XP comes from loot. And if you follow that, take for example the fighter, when you've got 2,000 XP, if the dice have pretty much landed as expected, or the DM is using an old school module, or has created his own adventure using the expectations, then that fighter is likely to have roughly 1,500 gold when they have 2,000 experience points. And the fighter is pretty much the benchmark in terms of that system, which, being arguably the most common character class, it's an ideal benchmark to have. So in terms of AD&D, that regarding Tunka Todd's question here, it's built in there. It's already in the system that maybe you don't get quite as much XP when the risk hasn't been there, but certainly at lower levels where they're going to be very dependent on the loot they found. At first level, almost any combat, almost any adventuring pursuit can be deemed as being dangerous and can be deemed as being fully worth 100% the proper XP rates. So unless the DM really adjusts other XP awards, I don't like the idea of 100 GP for 1 XP. That seems too strict. It goes out of the balance of, because there is balance there. Much as we hate the term balance, there is balance in AD&D.
You're going to be stinking rich by the time it comes to train up.
Absolutely, unless the DM has made other changes.
Mm-hmm.
And the DM has to make those other changes for the game to work in order if you're going to do that. Any other feelings on that?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it all determines. It's all based on somebody mentioned the progression. Like, how quickly do you want the game to progress?
Yeah.
Like, if you want to keep them in the low levels for a longer time, then fine. Yeah, lower the ratio so you have a slower progression. But again, it's about finding that balance. Some players might get really frustrated. Well, we're 20 sessions in and I'm just making level 2. It's like, because the progression is so slow. There needs to be a compensatory factor.
I'll have to say that you are mightily generous for giving people the best rating, like assuming that 1,500 is the default.
The general pace of play, I am generous, but the only time I've ever, certainly in recent years, when I was a kid, I didn't care about how I ran things. It was very slapdash. But since coming back to D&D about 10 years ago, I've run one long AD&D campaign, about 4 years. And the whole campaign was nostalgia on my part. And it was a chance for me to run these classic old modules in AD&D for a group of younger players who haven't experienced them. And I had a sequence of those that I'd set up and little links that I put in between them to make them flow a little bit better. And I had a certain pace that I wanted to keep them going, if you know what I mean. So if I'd have been very harsh in terms of training, it would have caused issues with the modules that I wanted to run. Now, I did end up running a side campaign for the players when their slapdash nature resulted in a lot of characters dying, and this was before they could get enough gold put aside to get the local clerics to raise them often and that sort of thing. So each player ended up having 4 characters in that campaign. But the pace worked all right. The pace worked fine. Giving that 1-for-1, that assuming that 1,500 gold for level, because it kept the characters suitably poor until about level 6 or 7, which for me is the optimal time, really. So then that they then start thinking about greater things. You keep them poor until they're getting decent equipment, but they're scratching together every copper and every silver to train at every opportunity when they get to like level 6, level 7. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a really good thing. It really keeps them honest.
Yeah, even more of that, if you assume that, like it says in the ratings, that it is assumed that 2 is the default.
It's normal. It's the default.
The good rating, and getting any worse than that, or if a player gets any worse than that, they are a problem player, and you should probably not have them at your table.
But generally, if you look at the way those ratings are defined, they are for Gygax talks about them being associated with the characters doing their expected job, which means fighters getting stuck in combat, clerics doing the healing and protecting and things like that, and doing a bit of fighting on the side, thieves sneaking around, doing a bit of scouting, looking for traps, trying to generally make the adventuring environment safe for everybody else, and the magic users hanging back and using their magic judiciously. And you tend to find that most players are going to play like that most of the time. And I think giving out that rating of 1 is absolutely fine when the characters are doing that job.
I tend to do it when something exceptional happens where they give up an advantage to play their character well.
Right.
The paladin, for example, who will stand up for honor and whatnot in the face of a massive adversity. Yeah, it's just one example, but because what I'll do is I'll have everybody set at a 2 starting any given session, and then something happens and they play really well, boom, they get moved up to a 1. Or they screw the pooch, they get dinged down to a 3. And if they do it again, they get dinged down to a 4.
Right.
That's the way I like to play it. But yeah, I use the same metric. It's like, okay, Gygax's suggestions, playing their appointed role, but I also factor in alignment and I factor in what they've established about their own individual characters too.
Okay. I mean, in that campaign, the only one that really caused some initial difficulties was one player had his second character after his first character. His first character got killed by the Panlung in U2, Danger at Dunwater. Actually, no. His first character, got killed by the Panlung. His second character got killed by poison in When a Star Falls. And he brought his third character in. And his third character, he rolled up a Cavalier that started at level 0 when the rest of the party were already at mostly level 2 or 3. And the job he had, the whole group had, keeping a Cavalier of level 0 alive when the Cavalier really has to do what a Cavalier does, which is get stuck in, not back down, go for the biggest enemy, fight with honor, all that sort of stuff. When they've got about 5 or 6 hit points and not the best of armor when they're level 0, that was quite difficult for him. That was quite difficult.
The way I see it, the rating system does fill in a lot of functions in the game. Mm-hmm. It makes sure that the players know how to use all of the tools available before they level, which is really important, and especially because if you guys have ever seen players who are out of their waters, like they have leveled up way too quickly, you know how easy it is for them to get it in over their heads.
It's also a good learning tool to example, like you can help guide players, especially newer players or players who are trying something new. In my case, I had a player who's used to playing the Dwarven fighter. He likes to be the heavy, but he branched out and I wanted to be a druid. So we had a situation where his druid, accompanied by a lawful good monk, a chaotic good ranger, and a good aligned fighter, went into a den of goblins. And the ranger, naturally, let's kill these goblins. The monk, who's like, these are a threat to our people. Absolutely. The warriors, like, yeah, they're goblins, get rid of them. Now, the goblins were not hostile. In fact, they were trying to parley with the group. But they mistook the parley for an act of aggression. So chaos ensued. But the druid jumped in and said, yes, let's get them, and participated in the slaughter. And it's like, so everybody else, their ratings maintained, but the druid got a ding. He went back to a 3. And when it came to training time, I used that as a prompt for his mentor to go over the situation with him and say, okay, so why did you participate in the wholesale slaughter of this group of goblins that was doing no harm to anybody and just living their life? And so that worked out really well. And now the player is always thinking about every situation from the druid's perspective.
I mean, also, you could argue, because obviously the whole thing about neutrality is if it's doing no harm, leave it be.
Right.
That is key to
as far as the druid is concerned. Hey, these goblins have a right to exist and to thrive, and they're living away from other people, not causing anybody else any harm.
The system also rewards already excellent players, or players who already have characters of higher level, to get to that level, like their appropriate skill level, more quickly. And I have also noted that it blocks out boosting strategies. You cannot really have lower level characters with you on higher level adventurers because those characters are not going to be able to help properly, which means that they're going to get a worse rating, which encourages them to go on their own adventures, level appropriate adventures.
But I mean, what you described there as boosting strategies, thinking back to it, that was almost considered to be normal play back when the game was in its infancy. It was, I've heard a lot of stories of it being very common for higher level characters to babysit lower level characters to help them get through.
How early are we talking?
Late 70s.
And then it makes sense why he added it.
Maybe, but maybe that's something we can come to about giving out awards based on contribution levels.
Yeah, that is also in the back of the book.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Right.
There's a big to do about milestones going on in here. Should we tackle that?
Yeah.
topic?
Okay. I have actually got milestone at the top here. It's actually at the top of my sheet. I've underlined level-based system. Now, I don't like in most level-based systems, I don't like the concept of a milestone in terms of milestone leveling. There's a big difference between milestone leveling and milestone experience. And this is something that a lot of certainly 5e orientated message boards make a mistake with. I've seen people arguing about milestone meaning milestone leveling, whereas in the book, it initially refers to milestone as milestone experience. And there's a big difference between the two. I'm not a big fan of either, to be honest, unless the system is specifically designed around it. And I'm going to give as an example here, Shadow of the Demon Lord, which before Saxius's work issues, myself, Gingerbeard, and General Nut were playing in a really entertaining game of Shadow of the Demon Lord with Saxius running it. Now, Shadow of the Demon Lord is based around strictly episodic play. The idea being a campaign lasts 10 adventures. Not necessarily 10 sessions, but 10 adventures. But the early adventures tend to be one session. They tend to be quite short. It's designed to be a fairly short campaign, but one that spirals out of control in terms of difficulty pretty quickly. Because that's the whole idea of the Demon Lord becoming more powerful and everything going wrong. And it's designed to be that sort of short-term game. And if you complete an adventure, you gain a level. But the way Saxius was doing it was, you know how you hear from a lot of current groups how if characters die, they come back in all at the same sort of level. He wasn't doing that at all. So at one point, we had my 7th level character with Gingerbeard having a 2nd level character and General Nut having a 4th level character because of various deaths and not being available for certain things. And the game still worked. This game still worked fine, which is not a problem. But it's that episodic design of the way the game works that is fine with it. It's not designed for a sandboxy game. It's not designed for a long-term open world game. It's designed for a fairly tight story game, but it's one with a lot of improvising in the story, at least the way he was running it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Because it's meant to have a dark tone to it, and we really did lean into the dark tone. In fact, we probably took it darker than Saxius had ever dreamed of at times.
And you can dream very dark.
You can dream very dark, and believe me, we were taking it beyond. There were things going on that would make quite a lot of people blush at times, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and that's in that sort of system. Milestone XP works fine, but in D&D, certainly in a D&D game which is designed around the core concepts of how D&D was created. Milestoning doesn't work at all. Doesn't work at all.
It does sort of for 5th ed, only because 5th ed is designed around the idea that everybody is equal and everybody's always at the same level. And 5th ed, core 5th ed at least, if you're not tinkering with it, you got to pretty much keep everybody at around the same level. I think maybe a 1, possibly 2 level disparity can work, but beyond that, you're asking for trouble. Whereas in old school games, you got OSE and AD&D, which are in my wheelhouse. You can have a massive level disparity and the game can still work.
Yes.
Players don't always necessarily think so right off the bat, but when they see it in practice, so this can work. I've had 1st level characters come in with a 7th level group, and hey, well, you're the rookie. Be smart, play smart. You'll level real fast. You won't be the rookie for long, but it works.
And if they do play smart, do you penalize them? For example, if they bring in a 1st level fighter in a 7th level group, and that fighter then has to be very careful about getting into fights, how do you approach the rating system?
Well, no, they're playing smart. They're playing what they should. I mean, you're still doing your duty. You're still doing your job. Let's say if that 1st level fighter is the guy who has to sit back and watch camp, right? They do guard duty. Well, if he's doing his job, he's doing his duty. He fights when he has to. He does what he has to do, what he's meant to do. He's fulfilling his role in the group. Not every warrior has to be a frontline tank. Some people are guards. Some people are bodyguards. We had a guy come in a number of years ago. He was a 1st level dwarf fighter. Same guy who played the druid I mentioned. 3 hit points. And he was assigned basically to stick to one of the other characters who was a vulnerable character, no armor, low hit points, and you are her bodyguard. You stay out of the fight. If something comes, you defend her. That's exactly what he did.
Okay, that's fine. And also, I mean, you can have because fighters can be good bowmen, and it can be their job to hang back and pepper the enemy, soften up the enemy with arrows before the bigger, stronger frontliners get in there. It doesn't. Yeah, fighting doesn't necessarily mean blind, headlong charging into everything.
If 0 level characters can survive adventures, a 1st level fighter can survive adventures.
That's true. That is true. Where was I going with that? So I'm going back to milestoning, right? People have taken milestone XP to mean the DM decides when everyone gets a level. You've hit a certain point in the story, everyone gains a level. What it actually describes as being the main in the book, and of course nobody ever reads the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, which is a shame because it's actually quite a good book. It actually describes milestone XP, milestoning, as at the end of the adventure, everyone gets an XP award for completing the adventure. That's how it defines it. And how is that particularly different to what we're used to, other than the idea of leaving the dungeon at the end of a session, bringing your gold back to a safe place, getting your XP for your gold at that point, and then going back into the adventure for the next session? It's not all that different, is it?
I mean, there are absolutely some similarities, but as it's been said in the chat and we talked about before, some people come to expect milestone as I show up and play, therefore I get my level.
Yeah.
And wrong.
That's what I want to come to as probably the biggest problem. And this is where I'm going to disagree with. Where is it? Where did our friend Elfbait post something up here?
Well, his name is Blue, so just look for the blue one.
He's not blue on mine. No, that's the thing. Because I'm in StreamYard and not YouTube. Well, I can't see the comment that I wanted wanted to flag up. Okay, here we go. Milestones also good for people playing who have actual lives and may not be able to always make it for game sessions. Yeah. I have seen it written in a lot of places that by the DM not giving the same experience points out to everyone in the group at the end of a certain point, or not giving everyone levels out at the same time if they're using milestone leveling, that they are punishing people for not being at all the sessions.
It's not punishment. You don't play, you don't get the reward.
Yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah, if we all have lives, we all have to juggle our lives around our gaming around our lives, however seriously you take your gaming in your life, whatever. And I am very much in the boat of, if you play in the session and you get some gold, you encounter some monsters, you achieve something, you get some reward. If you don't turn up for the session, you accept that you're not going to get XP for it. It's just part and parcel of gaming. And I'm going to stand by that. I'm going to completely stand by that.
Well, I get where he's coming from, but it's just a matter of how casual is the game.
Yeah,
I think he just posted casual. There you go. Great minds. Yeah, it's from, you get a lot of casual people who are playing it, and it's not their lives. They're not as dedicated.
Fifth edition has been written to appeal to the casual gamer.
To the casual gamer,
yes, yeah. That is very true. That is very. They want to get new people into games, often at game shops, Adventurers League type things, where they can just turn up and play whenever they feel like it.
And that's fine. That's not terrible for an introductory experience. But I think you really want to go with a more nuanced system, even if it's a more nuanced milestone system, which is fine for advanced level play or longer term play. You don't want to just keep up with you show up and you level up. You show up and you level up. You want players to understand that there's an aspect of you have to earn your progress.
Mm-hmm.
But
go on, Dave.
Even then, if you're playing with treasure as written, I don't see, and you're engaging in level appropriate content, I don't see how you're not leveling every 2 to 3 sessions. In a more casual game,
on average, yes. On average, yes. Some games, I let everything fall where they will, and this is my experience. I can't speak to anybody else, but I let the dice fall where they will, and sometimes the players have a bitch of a time beating a creature, and they get a minimal reward, and that's you roll the dice, you take your chances. Other times they have an easy time and they get a massive reward. Most of the time it levels out, but once in a while you get the outlier experience, and so it could take 5 or 6 sessions instead of the 3, right?
Certainly in newer systems such as 5th edition, you're right there, Dave. Older systems, I think it just depends on the style of play of the players and the nature of the adventure they're playing. If you're playing a lot of the old school adventures, some of them were quite laden with treasure, but they were deadly. So it was a high risk, high reward. And you could play, for example, Village of Homlet, go into that moat house, come out with 3 or 4 surviving characters and about 10,000 gold pieces. And you can do that in about 2 sessions. And yes, you can go up levels fairly quickly in that way. But that's not the rule, that's the exception. Most of the time, it's more like how our OSE games have been going, where people have been coming out at the end of a session feeling they've done well if they've got about 300 XP, 200 or 300 XP.
I'm still waiting for more XP, John. Still waiting for more. You can do it, John. You can give us more XP. You know you want to.
The XP might be in there. You may have missed some bits and pieces. You never know. You never know.
I don't know how many more of your excuses I can tolerate, John.
It all depends on what you want to your characters to do sometimes. I mean, the XP is there, but do you want to slaughter the innocents?
And I think that covers another sort of issue is players sitting at their experience level. You know, it can be fun. Like so many players are oh, I got to level up. And it's like, well, no, enjoy the experience level you're at.
Yeah.
And it's a skill. I mean, it really is. I mean, I have trouble doing it myself, but putting that game aspect, that metagame aspect from your mind and stop thinking in terms of, oh, I got to level up. It's like, no, play the person you are in the moment.
Yes. And I think that takes experience.
It does. Absolutely.
But not experience points, but takes player experience to break away from that. As it can be quite difficult to think about the game aspects. It can be quite difficult to not think about the game aspects. I mean, how many times you've been playing for years, Sean, and if you were to suddenly find a ruby worth 1,000 gold pieces, first thing that's going to spring into your mind is, wow, that's 1,000 XP. But you don't always you don't necessarily portray that on the table. Your character won't say, "Wow, this is 1,000 XP." You as a player,
this is loot. This is buying my high life for the next month. Woo!
Yeah, but you as a player will be thinking that, and some players will blurt that out in the game. It depends how you play. It depends on your depends on your experience. So we've defined milestone XP, because there is a big difference between milestone XP and milestone leveling, and the word milestone has got a bit of a bad rap, in that when people have lent towards it meaning milestone leveling, and unless the system specifically demands it, I'm not a fan of milestone leveling. But milestone XP, as in giving awards for completing something, I'm not totally against that, but I don't like it as the dominant factor. I will give little bonuses for completing certain tasks, but they have to be risky tasks. They have to be tasks that really further the campaign. Then it's not just little bits and bobs. So there will be certain adventure moments which could get a bonus XP, and you could argue that is milestone of a sort. But I will never let it. I will never let it replace traditional XP. Well, traditional gold for XP for gold, XP for encountering monsters,
or whatever you have, whatever metric you're using. Yeah.
Now, Halakar's mentioned earlier. Halakar has been given out XP for 0 level characters traveling through dangerous areas. Now, traveling through dangerous areas was a source of XP in MERP. There were lots of sources. XP for MERP is a whole minefield. I've simplified it when I run MERP, because it's an absolute nightmare to keep track of everything. I've simplified it, but I'm going to bring in here the idea of XP for doing new things. If it's something new that your character's never done before, for example, a little farm boy who is level 0 who wants to become an adventurer, leaving home and going 10 miles from home through dangerous lands for the first time with he's saved up his pennies and got his short sword and he's got his leather jacket on, and that's all he's got, and he's feeling brave. He's learning from that experience. So yes, I would give those sort of little bonuses for complete novice adventurers, but I don't like the idea of giving that sort of thing out for high level adventurers.
I can think that can be a slippery slope, because where does it start? Where does it end?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh,
that's true.
Well, this is the first time I fought an orc with that branding on him. So do I get extra XP for that orc? Because he's a new kind of orc.
MERP has that. If it's the first time your party have killed an orc, you get 4 times the experience points award.
Yeah, it's that. I
Thank
think
you.
it's a little too granular for me. I mean, to those
Yeah.
who love it, enjoy, but I'm absolutely for giving alternate XP awards. You know, as I said earlier, in a system where it's gold for XP, but you know, there's other things you can do to compensate, especially if you know, okay, the players have chosen to go on an adventure where there is no gold. The Hidden Shrine of Tomoe-chan is notoriously free of treasure. There's not a lot, not especially for a game that level, but you could sort of figure out what would be the average gold for a module of that level and say, okay, if they complete it, they get this amount of XP. Right?
Having played the series through, the Desert of Desolation series suffers in exactly the same way. The treasure is very light for the
I
levels
ran
of
that one through a
characters.
second ed group, and so we weren't using the gold for metrics, so nobody noticed.
But if you were playing first ed, you would have had to bump up, or you'd have had to add a couple of merchants who will buy magic items to give the players enough chance to earn enough gold to try and you're going to have to add those to the adventures for them to move through the levels that are expected by the series.
Right. That's what the Oasis of the White Palm is for, isn't it? It's basically the settlement that becomes your home base for the next part of that journey.
These merchants aren't detailed in there. It's up to the DM to add and it doesn't even suggest adding them. The adventure doesn't help you at all in that way. In fact, the settlement's not particularly big. So
you get the feeling the Hickmans weren't a fan of the core AD&D structure.
They weren't. No, not at all. That's one of my beefs I have with Tracy Hickman's adventures is that he doesn't stick. He doesn't consider established AD&D mechanics enough,
right?
In his adventures, but I think this is going to lead us on to what became really common in second edition AD&D, and you've already mentioned this: the idea of earning XP for doing your class things.
Mm-hmm.
I used it last time I ran second edition. And I will say now, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. It encourages, firstly, if you consider experience points to be learning, and you give a warrior 10 XP for every one hit dice creature they beat, and he goes out mashing hundreds of orcs, what is he learning from that 100th orc?
Well, taking on 100 creatures is still a task, even for a high-level fighter.
Imagine them all one by one. I know it's a really hypothetical situation, but he fights that first orc. Yes, you could argue he's learned something. Fights a second orc. He's still learning because that orc might be armed differently, might fight differently. When you get to the 50th orc, things are going to be very samey. When you get to the 100th orc, it's still worth 10. It's still worth that 10 XP bonus for doing your class thing.
I think it works out in the wash because when you think about it, by the time you're fighting that number of creatures, you're also high level. So if you're earning 10 XP when you need 1 million to level, it's a drop in the bucket anyway.
Yeah, true. That is true. That is true. And that is the argument.
Are there EXP penalties in second ed?
Not specifically.
No.
Of course.
I am ambivalent towards the second ed individual wars because I did use them and I did enjoy them to an extent. I thought they were decent. The problem was what I found was once the players figured it out, it got abusive. The fighter abilities were great because they're passive. Fighters got that extra XP just for doing what they're going to do. So there was no case of, okay, well, I want to try to do this to maximize my abilities. Wizards and priests, on the other hand, were looking for... And thieves. Well, thieves are easier to adjudicate as well because it was, okay, successful use of a thieving skill. And then all you had to determine is whether there were stakes to that. They weren't just walking around picking locks for the sake of it. They had to actually pick the lock for purpose. So that was easy to adjudicate. But with wizards, for example, it's like, okay, track the amount of spell levels you've cast. And then you have to think, okay, was it useful or not? But when you get utility spells, that means arguable that, okay, every night you're traveling and you're casting Leomun's Hut, that's a use for that. You are practically using it for purpose. So does that deserve the spell award? Yes or no? I ruled yes. But then it became a matter of, oh, we're going on a long journey. Ooh, the XP is going to come to me. It's going to take us 20 days, 20 times 3. And it's like, okay. And so the players would start manipulating that. Myself too, when I played in that system, I would look at it and calculate, oh, it'd be very easy. Oh, I got a druid. Okay, log of ever burning every night to both save the wood. That's part of my ethos. We're only burning 1 log for the night and keep everybody warm. It's practical. And so a log of ever burning every night, just on a 1-month journey, earned me practically a level. And so that's where it kind of fails. The concept is great, but then when it becomes subject to arbitration, it's very easy for a DM to get it wrong and a player to feel cheated. You never feel cheated about the fighters because it's a passive. If you got into a fight, the threat and the stakes were there. You get your 10 XP per hit die per level. But with the other ones, it became a little trickier. And that's where I eventually grew to dislike it.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing for me is it encourages the players to think about the game mechanics. It encourages the meta game. Rather than just sort of do what their characters would do in the moment.
Do your thing, yeah.
They are now thinking about how to milk a system.
Yep.
And it actively encourages that type of play, which to me is a problem. Of course, as a default rule, 2nd edition, training was an optional rule. So you could bring it in as an optional rule and swap it around, but then you had to adjust the adventures, which were not written in the same way as 1st edition adventures were written. They were much more story orientated. So I just want to come to a couple of questions, a couple of comments that I have starred. I should star more, but Gene made a decent point early on. Do 1 XP for 1 GP, loot back at town. If I want slower progression, I give out less gold pieces. Yeah. I know Mage you're a fan of just letting the dice fall as they will in terms of treasure tables and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But this is an option if you want to slow the game down for any reason or speed it up. It's nice to have that in your armory as an accepted way of adjusting things.
It's a tool. The one thing is, don't do it on the fly. Don't yoink away well-earned treasures. Let things play out as they are. But yeah, absolutely. It's like, oh well, here's a mission. Dangle the mission in front of the players, and you've designed it with less XP, less loot, but they still have to complete the mission. You're still playing the game.
Exactly. From the Hilt made this comment. Where do we stand on giving a wizard XP for researching and creating a unique spell? I would give XP for it. It's in fact, in 2nd edition, it's pretty much by the book to give XP for it. But in 1st edition, I would look at the guidelines for magic items and work it out accordingly.
I think that's reasonable.
If you mirror the effects of a magic item, or even just like look at the value of spells in spell books rather than on scrolls.
Well, so by the book, creating a magic item yields the XP value of the item for the wizard,
right? Okay,
or priest. So that's already covered.
I couldn't remember whether that was in 1st edition or not, but I remember it was definitely there in 2nd edition.
Yeah. Creating a spell, it doesn't say one way or the other, but when you look at, if you find a scroll, you get 100 XP per spell level of that scroll.
It's slightly different though with the spell book, though, isn't it? You get a bit more.
I give 1,000 XP per spell level for a spell book because it's different. The scroll is the spell cast onto the scroll and disappears when you do it. The spell book is a permanently inked formula, so that's more valuable. So I would just say the same thing. If you create your own spell, you get 1,000 XP per spell level.
Yeah, I would do the same.
Yeah,
I'd do the same.
it's simple enough.
But that's also that is the magic user playing well, because that's what a magic user is supposed to do.
And the time and expense to do that, absolutely, you get XP for that.
Yeah, I'm totally for that. Magic users have a hard enough time as it is. So
yeah.
But you could argue that when you get to the levels where you're capable of doing that, your magic users are hardcore anyway. But and I mean, Halakar, in response to my point about orcs, all those orcs, Halakar does make a decent point here. When he's studying Aikido, he had a student complain about practicing the basic stance. He said he already knew it. Sensei said that he'd been practicing it 40 years and didn't know it. That is true. I did. I still haven't gone back to judo, but I trained. Apart from when I was injured, I trained 2 or 3 nights a week for 8 years, week in, week out. Sometimes more. And when it came to my grading, my black belt grading, I probably used 3 moves to win my fights. That's it. And that's because I'd hammered those moves and found my way of doing them, my way of making it work. That to say, you learn the syllabus and you learn the basics of everything in the syllabus to get your black belt. But once you've got your black belt, then you learn judo properly, because you learn to adapt it for your body size, for your own capabilities and limitations. You learn which things suit you. You learn how to adapt them. My most effective throw, if I'd have demonstrated how I do it at my grading, I'd have probably failed, because I don't. If anyone's done judo, the throw I used most effectively throughout my time I was training was one of the throws you learn at the very beginning, Ippon Nagi. It is a simple over-the-top throw. It's difficult to pull off in a contest. And the throw is basically performed sleeve grip, collar grip, and you pull the sleeve, you turn under, and you get your shoulder right in under their armpit, and you take them over the top. I used to fight with a right-handed grip, same grip, sleeve grip, collar grip. And then I would do a Ponzi Nagi by yanking the collar towards me, releasing their sleeve and turning in the opposite way. Simply because my hips don't let me turn that way one way properly. But it worked for me. And it gave me a stronger pull. It's not the correct way of doing the throw, but it's the correct way for me in contest. And gripping right-handed, throwing left-handed would catch out less experienced fighters all the time. More experienced fighters, no chance. They knew it was coming. But Halakar's right here. I became good at that throw. Every single training session, I'd do at least 10 repetitions of Ippon Nagi, my style. Every single session, often a lot more. Sometimes I'd do it 30 times in a minute with people running at me and just catching them, bang, just turning in. So I hit it really quickly. But yeah, I suppose, yeah. So that has completely blown out my argument about the 100 orcs. Okay, ignore that. I was talking nonsense.
Gene,
anyway,
sorry, Slan has a question here. For magic items, do you split the XP equally in the party, or does the character getting it all get the XP?
Right.
I run it 2 different ways, based on 2 different game systems. For OSE is very specific about, when the group gets back, you divide the XP value of all the loot equally amongst the participants. So I just play it that way for simplicity. In AD&D, I run it more granularly. You get the XP for the treasure you keep when everything is divided. So a character keeping a magic item, they get the XP for the magic item. Right. Likewise, whoever takes whatever loot, coin, whatever, they get their XP. The exception to that is potions. I give XP. I award XP to the potion drinker on the time they drink it. That's sort of how I rule that.
How I run it in AD&D, I go against the book. So I know the book says they're meant to get the XP for whatever they keep individually. Mm-hmm. I insist when I run AD&D that the party have a pool of loot, and they're jointly responsible for that pool of loot until they get back to a safe place. At which point, I will total up the XP value of the whole lot, and give it all out equally, and then they choose what they want to keep. So I'm afraid I do the.
You do the OSC thing for AD&D, yeah. I think a lot of
cheers,
people do.
Doof. Cheers, Doof. Probably that's Doof's way of saying he's going to go to bed. Doof's in Sweden, so he's an hour ahead.
Right.
So it's 11. It's 11 o'clock at night for him.
I just raised
Doof.
my hand and waved to the screen, though the camera's not on me right now.
well, I'm gonna say one other thing when you're talking about that, John, is you have to look at, I know that Elfbait and I were going back and forth, the difference between troop play and dedicated play, which is troop play is just like what you're doing right now with OSC, whoever's coming in and going out.
Yeah.
And what I would look at is whoever's part of that party when they leave is what the XP is divided out. But
that's how I do it. Yes. That's how we've been doing it. Yeah.
And I think that's the way to do it, because now, again, it depends on how you want to play, but it discourages the thief from stealing from other players or hiding treasure because they get no benefit for doing so.
Yes.
And so it creates a better environment in that aspect. It just depends on how you want to do it, and the truth of it is we were playing as kids. We weren't doing troop style. We weren't playing with 20 or 30 people where people rotate in and out. So I know this is where Eli was talking about it. You want everyone fairly close. Yes, because they're adventuring together all the time. If the guy leaves, and this is what I know from 5e, if they aren't close in level, then it's like, dude, you can't come with us. It kind of sucks that way. So
my major point there was on it. It really comes down to the type of game you're playing. If you're playing a super casual, we're just getting together. This is basically board game night, but with D&D. There's no point in holding people back. You're actually just going to turn people away, and they're going to go away. I would never suggest that the doofus who always blows the game off to go play pool or whatever, gets to climb up with everybody else. That's a different matter, But I've played enough with enough people who really want to be there, but absolutely can't. They've got kids, they've got wives, they've got jobs that require overtime, and I feel really bad as a GM on saying, well, sorry, because you're responsible and you take care of your life, you're going to suffer and not be able to have fun. That's an exception. That's what I was going for. I mean, I'm not using it at all as an exception. He's gone. Wait, there.
No, there you
go. It was never intended as an excuse for people to screw off the game and just ignore it.
But that's that sort of situation where 5e is a good game for that sort of group, though. It supports that style of play where people are.
Especially considering you're getting something at every level in 5e or almost every level. So, but it was also, I think you said earlier that 5e, 5e is suitable for that kind of play. I think 5e is a direct result of people's increasing time crunch.
Probably, yeah.
5e is, I would say it's not written to appeal to people with short time availabilities. It's written to accommodate that. You can see it in the core rules. I mean, yes, it'll appeal to them, but the intent was we've gone from 6 to 8 players playing 6 to 8 hours to an expectation of 4 people playing up to 4 hours a night is what 5e is written for.
And I agree with what Eli said there. The other thing is that, when we're talking about XP, this is why, you want to, I don't mind if you give extra XP if you can make it. It's like, oh, okay, if you come in, you get an extra 100, but we'll still do the milestone aspect. However, it's going. The thing is that if you're doing the sandbox, milestone doesn't make sense. If you're doing a story base, like, okay, guys, we're going to have I say linear, and people don't like it, but what's funny is people seem to like both. They want the ability to alter the story, but that's what they're really complaining about. Is the railroad says the story will do this no matter what you do. And
I came in a little later, but one of the things I know that we used to do back in the day is we merged the second edition accomplishment-based XP with the standard 1E experience, to where you had your and use the guidelines set in 2E layered on top of the 1E experience to allow classes to get the boost for doing things.
Right. One thing I'm going to come in and say now is the XP tables in earlier editions were created very differently. So even if you turn up to half the sessions, and even if say for example, you're getting 200 XP for every 400 XP that Omanal's character is getting, you'll reach level 2 at the same time as he reaches level 3. You'll reach level 3 around the time he reaches level 4.
Yeah.
You'll reach level 4 around the time he reaches level 5. That's not a big difference.
No, and it makes
especially considering those 1E levels were much more incremental than 5E with its big jumps. If you miss a level in 5E, you're missing a big chunk of play.
well, I'm going to bring up the other point too. Is that I agree with you on all of that. But that also allowed you to farm characters that were low level. You went over and you said, "Oh, okay. You know what? Everyone looks at like a 5th level magic user. 5th level magic user is equivalent to a 2nd level fighter
in combat.
In handheld combat.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in combat, in hit points, in most cases, he's pretty equivalent.
Right.
Now he does have more firepower, but
if that 5th edition magic, if that 5th level magic user wins initiative, though, that 1st level fighter. Psh.
Well, what I'm referring to is that 5th level magic user could go run around with 1st level characters in the old school.
True.
And do very well in that aspect and farm them up fairly quickly. Or they could take out, you know what, guys, you normally fight like 1st level monsters, which have crap gold. Let's go for 2nd level monsters, kind of your gnolls and bugbears, where you can kind of take them out that have a little bit better money and will advance you faster. I'll advance slower, but it's not a huge deal because there is that jumping in the gap. And so by the time he makes, to be fair, if he goes over and gets the same experience points as everybody else, by the time he gets up to 6, the other players are at 5th.
Yeah.
So it does work out that way. If you can farm people up fairly quickly at the low levels, if you're willing to accept the slower, and then get people close to where you can go, all right, now we can go kick ass at some other, in the more equivalent modules. So I think that it encouraged the little farming of the 1st level player very easily. And then, it's like, oh, okay.
Which I think is important in their older style, big table, open table campaign play, because you needed to have a character who could slot in if your other character was busy.
Yes.
That's what I said earlier. I mean, the level disparity in older systems wasn't as bad, whereas in 5th Ed, you need them to be tightly together.
I'm going to bring up one other thing, though, is while we're talking about XP, there's also the point of training, which I know you did. Well, if you were playing under the old things, guess what? You're playing, which meant you had to bring a new character in. So you had this rotating characters where it wasn't. You're probably playing 3 characters at any one time because of training and other stuff. Just so you could keep up there. So you're this idea if you're not advancing is not the same nowadays, where they want to play pretty much like one day it's like real life and they play like real time. Whereas the old one, it's like, okay, look, when I say real time is, I mean, there is no big gap where they're just sitting around doing
right.
nothing.
You don't do downtime. Yeah.
Right. But in the old one, it's like, well, this character's in downtime. I have to bring another character in. So you were getting characters up in levels, even though you may not have realized it. So you weren't just like, oh God, I'm bored. This guy's been 7th level forever, and I can't do anything with him. It wasn't quite like that. One night you play your 7th, one night you play your 3rd, and then you rotate them in and out. I think that's something that we've missed. That, to be fair, that was something I missed when I was growing up as a kid, because I had the one group with the one small area. So,
hello, Bear.
Good evening, Bear. How you doing?
So, to that point, Omanel, we have that exact situation coming up this weekend. My AD&D group meets on Sunday, and 2 of the regulars can't make it. So, rather than continuing the mission they were on, they're all swapping out and using their alternates until the full group is back together and building up their alternate characters.
I also think that, to be fair in this, while we're talking XP, is that allowed players to understand all the different dynamics in the group. If you're a fighter, you only think as a fighter, but when you play a magic user, you have to think like a magic user, which helps you understand what is necessary to do in the party. Of like, look, guys, if you're going to do this, you need to play this other role to help protect me. Oh, okay. Yeah, I understand. My magic user died because someone didn't do their job. All right. And I think that helped out that aspect as well.
But quick question to Bear, seeing as he's just joined us. Preferred methods of giving out XP. Are you a traditionalist? Are you more of a milestoner? And how you've started playing against the Dark Master? How does that do XP?
Okay, well, to answer the first question, I'm not a traditionalist. To answer the second part, I'm not really a milestoner. I have my own system I use, it's called game survival. So basically, because my players are all old men and we have very limited time and we can miss games and stuff like that, the system we now use when we were playing D&D finally is for level 2, 2 sessions. For level 3, 3 more sessions. For level 4, 4 more sessions, and onward and onward and onward. Which means a level 10 campaign played bi-weekly could take a year, 2 years to play out, which is great. Gives them lots of time to play their characters. As they start getting more kinky abilities at the higher levels, they get more time to spend with them and learn them. I hate giving XP for murder. I hate giving XP for grave robbing. And I use a hero point system for rewards for good role playing or inspiration or whatever you want to call it. So that takes care of that aspect for
you know, chat are going to be throwing illusionary cabbages at you right now.
Hey, listen, I'm going to go make some sacred cow burgers. Anybody want one?
Only if it's Wagyu.
Sorry, what's that?
Only if it's Wagyu sacred cow.
Wagyu, no, we don't do Oriental adventures here. So the third question, against the Dark Master, you have to agree during the campaign, at the start of the campaign, to your experience point tree, which is basically these are the things you'll get experience points for. But conveniently, they gave one which is an example is a group experience point, which is like 6 things, and that way everybody can level at the same time, or at least get points at the same time. And it eliminates the need for, but I'm the wizard and I totally own that session, so I deserve more. No. You're a party working together as a team. You rise together, you fall together. Simple as that. So that's what I do.
I'm going to bring, you're talking about the systems. We have to look at, and while we're focusing on D&D, part of it is, and this is the other part, because as I get older, I want to be a lazy DM. I don't want to have to track every experience point. I don't want to have to track every gold. I don't want to track, because it doesn't seem like that big of a deal until you get silver pieces and copper pieces for however many monsters. And did they go through this one and get this? And did they go for this one and get this? And how did they split that up? And am I going to do this? If at a certain point, like, look, this is what I do for my job. If I want to do accounting and contracting, I'm like, no, as much as Saxius loves all of his spreadsheets.
Okay. Now don't feel targeted now, because I do have I do have this as a little note here. Okay. A common excuse for people who don't want to use regular experience points. A common excuse. I'll mute you. Shut up. A common excuse for people who don't want to use. They don't want to use.
He's been cutting in and out all night.
He's gone. He's back again. All right. Just so I'm going to say it again. A common excuse is XP is too much work. My reply to that is keeping track of time too much work? Is keeping track of treasure?
That is not a valid argument. XP is not hard. Can you count? Can you
but I would like to the time when I was a teacher for 15 years. Apparently, keeping track of time is extremely too much work for a lot of people.
What about tracking hit points or tracking enemy numbers? A DM has to do these things. It's just part of being a DM. You track the experience.
It's not really a DM's job to track XP. I mean, other than occasional
until you award it is,
yeah. Well, and again, it's not so bad if you know exactly what's there, but in the old modules, and I'll tell you this much: OSE. This is where OSE really does a good job, is showing you every XP and every location that's in there, so you can break it down. They've really, like the, if you look at
AD&D did that. AD&D did that from about 1983 onwards. The UK series really sort of nailed it in terms of presentation of monsters and stuff within the adventure. It showed you everything you needed in the stats. Early on, yes, it was a pain in the arse.
Okay. So you just
because when I'm running at the end of each session, I just kind of do a quick tally of this is what you guys did, this is what you guys did, this is what you guys did, this was how much XP for this session, and then.
But again, it depends on, because then you're like, well, second edition's hard. Like, well, how's that any harder than tracking gold? For what they have.
Second edition. I always said I don't like the second edition system. It is a pain in the ass, but it's also because it makes the players think mechanically as well.
Yeah, well, and so when you're looking at it, and I'm going to mention one thing, whenever we're talking about XP encourages certain actions by players. It doesn't matter what game system it is. If I'm going to go play Numenera says discovery. Discovery is what gains you XP, not necessarily combat. And so it encourages the players to go explore. In D&D, the old school, it encourages gold, not combat, gold. But in second edition and third and fourth and fifth, it really encouraged combat more than anything else. So people think they have to fight every monster to advance levels. Rather than saying, you know what, it's a lot easier to go bypass and steal the horde from the king and get all that money out. And guess what? We don't have to fight. We have to fight maybe 1 or 2 guards. And if we do it well, then we get the same level as if we had to fight our way through.
It's easy to get around that, though. I just award XP for thwarting an enemy, not necessarily killing them. If the encounter is 15 goblins and you get by it by dressing up like bunnies and sneaking through the room and they fail their intelligence checks, you win.
Mm-hmm.
You got through that encounter and you get the same XP for beating those goblins.
But did you get that loot?
It depends. Did you also come in there saying you're the Easter Bunny and that their loot is faulty and you have to take it in to clean it, and you all of the Grinch?
Right. You are Easter Bunny. You would know. Go ahead.
Exactly.
But those are just some of the ways they go for it. But if you look at 5th edition, it really does encourage a lot of the combat. Most of the feature about combat.
It fully encourages murder.
Yeah.
One of my players in my last 5e game, every time we'd play, every session, he'd just keep track of the kills. So when we do XP at the end of the adventure, he'd be like, okay, so we did 15 goblins, and he'd go through the list. And that's where I decided I was done with XP points, because I realized XP, as someone I think said in the chat, rewards, and you said here for Numenera, rewards the player style. Like, you reward what you want the players to do. Yeah. Therefore, 5e actively encourages murder hoboing with their experience point system. When I switched it to a per sessions played sort of milestone system, it encouraged people to play.
Yeah.
It encouraged them to actually play the game and try and find ways for their character to survive. When I first proposed this on, I think on my community tab, someone said, well, then players could just avoid all the confrontations and survive. And I went, wow, that'd be a fun game to play in, huh? We're just going to stay in the tavern and do nothing. Okay, well, go home. We're done. This campaign's over. Bye. There's this mentality that players can just, it's a contest. It's not. We're all here to play and have fun.
The thing to do then is to break that sort of mindset is to use that old school mentality of Elf Bait has already mentioned, that if your party playing 5th edition dress up as bunnies and avoid the goblins and avoid combat with the goblins, but still achieve their aim, then that they will get the XP. And then when you hand the XP out, you make a point of saying you put yourself in very little risk in that situation. You avoided combat. You still got full XP for it. And you actually tell them. You tell them.
You just, like you said,
I do role-playing bonuses and trap. I've always done that. It's like, hey, it was really cool. That was a great idea. Going to the Burgermeister and finding a way to, get him in on the thing, and that's worth X amount of XP. That's a style thing. I mean, that's something I've done a long time ago, and I just can't not do it, because kind of like Bear said earlier, I don't want to necessarily have murder be the only way out, only way to get through.
But you reward when you reward role playing, you encourage role playing. I mean, that's what part of it. That's why I said XP encourages the game style and play for it. That's what I like about certain ones. I remember, and I'm going to bring up Star Frontiers, which apparently only Eli and I know, and maybe Bear. But part of it is on how well you played in the game. You got 1 to 3 XP, and you're like, oh, for this section, to get through this section, depending on how well you play.
D6 Star Wars was similar. It's like you have that little checklist of and you might get 5 points in a section.
Yeah, Marvel. You got karma for doing stuff.
Yep. And you lost karma for not doing stuff.
And you lost karma for doing stupid stuff. Yeah.
Bear, have you heard the story that Slan's referring to here?
The goblins with a chicken on their head?
Oh, I know that it has to do with you and Gingerbeard.
And against the Dark Master. Not against the Dark Master, sorry. Shadow of the Demon Lord. Demon Lord. Saxius's game, all of us are playing goblins in it. And we have completely tormented poor Saxius with our goblin style of play and the tangents we go off at. And it has become a canonical part of games played on my Discord, since one of the players in that game decided that he would hide by placing a chicken on his head. And he successfully hid. And then an NPC chose to left town to make sure he got away safely. We went and stole the chicken and put it on that NPC's head and told the NPC, they can't see you now. You've got a chicken on your head. So it has become canon that goblins hide by putting chickens on their heads.
Your love of the halfling leaf has addled your senses.
that game, unfortunately, we haven't been able to play it for a while because of Saxius's work, but that game was wonderfully silly, wonderfully dark, wonderfully twisted, and we knew of Saxius's sort of ideas for DMing, and I would say as a group we pretty much set out to torment him from the word go, but we made him laugh along the way. We made him laugh.
Fun. As long as you're having fun.
We had a lot of fun.
Well, I'm going to bring up we're talking about XP, and I know everyone talks about D&D, but then you get the one that's, like Dungeon Crawl Classics. Your XP is based on the danger and threat level, which is very similar to Palladium. Your danger and your threat level determine your XP, not what you're actually fighting. So if you come up with a clever plan and you overcome something that could wipe you out, well, DCC is a little bit different, but for Palladium, I thought the Palladium had an excellent one, which is, if you're 10th level and you're fighting something that's trivial, you don't get more XP. You get actually less XP than if you're low level fighting something that's much more powerful than you. And you go, okay. So, and it encouraged
that's also in the AD&D DM's guide. You are meant to get less XP for lower level monsters when you're higher level.
Yeah, I would say that Palladium probably cribbed it from the DMG, considering Palladium is D&D plus.
Well, and the DMG doesn't really say that you get less really for monsters. You get less for treasure, I think is what it's supposed to do.
It talks about the threat level. It talks about the threat level.
Just for threat level, yeah.
And to be fair,
it's in one of the essay sections in there, kind of,
that describes the whole book.
I read it.
It's not like there's a chart or a clear, concise rule for it in the DMG. No, this is the first edition a DMG. So
well, it's thrown out there, and it doesn't give you. It says, well, kind of, should you or should you not? It doesn't say where it actually meets, which again comes down to, are these a threat to you? But that's what I'm referring to. Is a lot of these games, if you encourage that, where well thought out play gives you more XP than just being able to go kick its butt, it makes a huge difference. And that's one of the reasons I do like. So again, I don't mind.
Call again.
Yeah. Well, we keep shifting around. I keep moving in the bottom right hand corner
because you keep cutting out.
Yeah. Who, me or
you? Yeah.
You keep dropping from the stream.
Okay.
Like for a few seconds, but you're back.
I don't know. I keep seeing everyone else move around. So.
Good storytelling by the players
yeah.
and the DM working together is the point of the damn games, right? Doesn't matter unless you're playing Paranoia. The whole point of this is to work together as a group to create something memorable and fun. Yes, it's my job as the DM to challenge you. And yes, it's your job as the players to sort of try and outthink my opponents and puzzles and what have you. But at the end of the day, we should be working together to achieve fun.
Yes, of course.
I get really arsed off when I show up at a game or someone comes into a game I'm running and their attitude is the adversarial, how much XP do I get for the farmer? That joke from Gamers 2, how much XP do I get for killing that farmer? It's like, it's not a video game.
Nothing.
What you're getting is the town guard coming after you. That's what you're getting, like, relax.
And well, what's the other thing that, we're looking, a lot of it is, at a certain point, you want to encourage players to do things. This is why I don't mind milestones. If you're doing a story-based aspect, milestones encourage the players to move the story along. If you're doing a sandbox, then milestone doesn't make sense because it's not geared for that.
I mean, we are generally focusing on sort of the old school D&D when we're discussing these various systems. But yeah, you are right in that there are more modern games, more modern adventure design, more modern systems, which, the milestone approach, because of the story base of the game, it fits those sort of games.
I mean, you
I would
create
say-
a milestone system for hex crawls.
I would say most people here, most people in chat aren't really I mean, we may dabble in those sort of games, but most of us, it's not our main game.
I'm going to mention one other thing where we talk about XP. Let's not forget which is actually pretty good, is Call of Cthulhu, and their XP is a little bit different, which is you have to use the skill to get it up, but you have to succeed at the skill, and then you have to fail to get it up, which encourages players allows them to learn.
I'm getting old. I fail to get it up all the time.
Oh,
Hey!
There's that Canadian comedy I love so much.
well, the problem is that you were taking the red pill, not the blue one.
The problem is I can't afford any pill.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. What happened to that free health care up there? No, I'm sorry. But no.
Can I just really quickly on that note just do a mitzvah for everybody in the world who thinks we have free healthcare in Canada? We don't. We pay for it through our extremely high taxes on everything we buy and everything we make. Stop thinking it's free, everyone.
Yeah, that's
please.
true anywhere with the socialized healthcare.
Exactly. In the NHS in England.
You pay for it. You just pay for it up front.
Exactly.
Well,
Anyway.
You invest in it.
I want my money back.
There's Saxious.
Yeah, exactly.
He's sitting there in bed. He's like, oh, can't sleep. Sits up. Oh my God, what's going on? His wife. What is it, honey? Somewhere they're diverging from the topic.
I don't know him. Is he German?
Danish living in the
UK.
UK.
That's part of my ancestry. They can be Germanic in their natures. Yes, it's true. They are physically attached to Germany.
You've been on stream with Saxious, haven't you?
Once, I don't think he cared for me because he made a face at one point when I was ranting about something. I was like, okay.
He always makes faces.
Nah,
I know that face. I have a cousin who makes that face. That's usually the invade England face. That's what that is.
He's Danish, of course.
Well, I mean, I like it for skills that encourage you to, and to be fair, Call of Cthulhu has it where you can study outside. This is why I like skill-based systems. You can study outside, and then if you're using it within game, you mark it off. And part of the, how do I want to put this?
The one thing Call of Cthulhu lacks, though, is like, no matter how, by the book, no matter how much your character goes out and lifts weights, you're never going to get stronger.
Yeah, that's a problem with BRP in general.
Yeah.
But a lot of games have that problem. Cyberpunk has that problem.
Most games don't have any way to increase your stats, except for like 5th editions. It's like every couple of levels you can do it.
That was 3rd edition started that noise.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not bad. But Star Wars, of course, you just spend character points. But
but that's one of the things that, when you're talking about is that allows you to go through there. I think that was one thing that kind of turned me off about Traveler was like, what the hell? Experience to learn things means something to me. Whereas it's like, well, it might take 6 months if you're doing nothing, sitting on the side. I'm like, what?
I used to get really annoyed when I was younger at games like Traveler and stuff like that, where if your character aged, they started losing stat points. I'm like, that's bullshit. Now I'm 52, and I'm like, oh god, it's so true. It's so accurate.
I rolled over the other day and hurt myself.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for my intellect and wisdom increase from hitting 50. I mean, what the hell?
Yeah, I legit got out of bed the wrong way one day, and my back was out for 2 days just for fun. It's like, I want that in a role-playing game.
Coughed yourself into agony yet? Coughed yourself into agony.
We're going to enter the dungeon. Cool. Bob, as your character's in his 50s, could you please just make a roll to see if you pull your back walking down the stairs? That'd be great. Thanks.
Well, no. Here's my favorite is, and I kid you not, it's a little bit different, but, talking about this was, I remember going into somewhere, and going into a clinic, and there was a girl, and she had a broken ankle. I was talking to her, and she's like, yeah, I do kickboxing, I do this, I do all of these physical activities, rock climbing. I said, is that how you break your ankle? She said, no, I was wearing high heels, and I slipped off the curb. And I went, what? So anyway, but back to, when we talk about experience points, we're talking experience points, but there's just experience overall. And I think that that's one of the things that was kind of, and I agree with you, getting your stats up. When experience points can be used for different things. Oh, you get your experience points. Oh, you can raise your stats. Oh, you can use experience for this. I like that aspect because what
I
it
like
starts doing
systems
is
where your experience for failing. That's what I like. When you have like, there's some games out there that when your character fails, they still get experience because they're learning.
Oh, it gives you more experience if you fail, which means as you get higher skills, you fail less often, so you actually learn less. Which
Sure.
is,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
BRP.
Yeah, BRP to a certain extent with BRP.
Sure.
Well, just
But
the way that you get your way you get your skills up is by
Yeah, but
failing a
it's
skill check.
gambling, though. That's the problem with the BRP improvement system. It's gambling. Did I use the skill? Yes, I did. Now roll. Oh, I still
Yeah,
didn't.
it also does promote a certain amount of gamist attitude where the players are like, "Oh, I got to make sure I use as many skills in a session as I can."
That is true. That is true.
But that's easy to fix because then you just say nobody uses a skill unless they have a good reason for it, or I,
Yeah.
as a GM, ask you to make a skill check.
Oh, always.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly. Yeah, you should not be rolling if the GM isn't telling you to roll.
Not like this guy's going to go like, I'm going to step into the room. I'd like to make a dexterity check. I'm going to search the bookshelf for dust. I'd like to do an investigation check.
or that player who rolls the dice and then tells you what they just rolled for, and you're like, "Did I ask you to roll that shit, motherfucker? Did I call for that roll? Well, no, but I want to."
Just tell them every time they make an unauthorized die roll that the dark powers notice them just a little bit more.
Wait. If you can do Conan, you just drop another Doom token into your little pot. You know, you're just like, well, wait a minute, stop that. Like, I didn't tell you to roll.
Just have a collection of little Cthulhu idols, and every time they do some dick move, you just put one more on the table.
Well, that's Conan. Conan has the whole bowl. You have the whole.
But the thing is,
I have
okay,
them in
so
3 sizes.
look, it's not tangential to experience points, and one of my players hates that type of a system because there was a game we were playing. I can't remember what it was. The bowl of bennies, we'll call it, for lack of a better term. The players, when they run out of their personal ones, could take ones from the communal bowl to use, but that gave the DM a Doom token to use later.
Yeah.
And one of the players was like, he's like, why the fuck am I being punished because Steve can't fucking go without spending bennies on every goddamn roll he makes? I'm like, that's a really good point, actually. The punishment should fit the crime, not blanket the whole group. So maybe we won't use a system like that. And
Well. Here's what you do as the DM: is you go over and say, okay, and then you let if you really want to, is you let the players vote. If that will resolve it, it's like, oh, guess what?
And just reach across the table and put the Doom token on the person who used the benefit token.
Exactly.
On your
There you
character
go. That
sheet.
works.
There you go.
So
Now they know
I don't
that
play
they're-
that game. What does a Doom token
They're
do?
tempting fate.
It's give the referee like bonus roll or bonus points.
In games like that, the Doom token often is like bonus rolls, or even you can drop a chunk of them to like bring extra enemies into a fight and stuff like that.
Yes. I like the idea.
It's a story mechanic, sort of.
But this is experience related
mechanic.
because beyond the character's experience, this is now the player's experience.
Yes.
Where the players learn to maybe be a little bit less selfish or a little less obsessed with always succeeding, or they just learn to maybe play a bit smarter and remember they're in a group and it's not a solo show, right?
Yeah.
He's back. I was about to miss him, but you didn't give me enough time to miss you, man. You were just gone and back.
Phasing in and out of reality.
Yeah.
He's a phase elf.
Dimensional instability.
Right. Anyway,
Every time he comes back, he's a new personality.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna.
This is Omenel 316, Omenel 427.
Clunky. I could have done a very.
Where's my
smooth
Morty?
segue into- I could have done a very
was that?
smooth segue into this point about 10 minutes ago, but conversation wandered off a bit. So it's going to be a very clunky segue now. I think one. We're discussing the whole concept of experience points, and assuming it's experience points are literally the character's learning.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
you go all the way back to AD&D. You got experience points for gold. You only gained new abilities by doing what?
Adventuring, usually.
No,
Training.
no. Training.
Yeah.
So in AD&D, I would argue that experience points should have been dubbed training points.
AD&D, they're just such an abstract gamist concept anyways, so
Everything in AD is meant to be abstract of some form.
yeah.
Simply by virtue, it gives you narrative freedom.
I mean, I'm focusing on first edition here, but the idea was that you didn't gain any new abilities until you paid somebody who is better than you at what you do to teach you a bit of what they know. And that was the use for gold, mostly at those early levels. So that ties in with the idea of finding gold and most of your experience coming from gold.
It's just a rose by any other name, really. It's the same exact process. You just be relabeling it.
Gold may as well have been points and your XP being your score at the time. I mean,
but in a sense, even putting them down to learning through character experiences doesn't really fit in terms of thinking in first edition AD&D terms, because your character doesn't gain anything through their experiences, hardly. Almost all of it comes from training. And thus, but calling it experience points, and the shift that has happened in gaming since those days, since we've moved away from training rules and gold, XP for gold, imagine if they just called them training points back then. Would we be thinking the same way at all about these games?
Yes, we would just be calling it training points, arguing about it instead of experience.
No, I think I see where he's going. I think the perception that it is supposed to be experiential has driven the shift in trying to make the rules fit the name more in different editions. Because early on, it was all the XP came from gold, but how is that really a measure of your experience? And so second edition flat out comes out and says we want to make it more a matter of your actual experience, rather than the gold you collect or the monsters you kill, or at least show it more. And so I mean the name definitely drove the desire for rules designers to make it more about your experience than your.
That's what I'm trying to get at. That's exactly.
Although so if they had called it training points, that drive, that dissonance that drove that drive to change the system might not have been there, because it would have been, I got to go and get trained to get better. That's just not. It's cut and dry.
It's cut and dry. Players still would have complained about it. What do you mean you're going to train at every level?
But would the designers have felt a need to try and make the name fit the actual thing?
I'm going to bring one other thing up is, if you look at a lot of it and how many video games have used the level-based system. I mean, when you really start looking at it, it was perfectly fit for the 1970s video games. If anyone
video games just ripped it straight from D&D. So
well, from the ASCII stuff. Well, I remember going through. It's like, you get this. Oh, look, this magic item gives you so much experience points. Oh, you got this much gold, so much experience points, and you killed this monster, so much experience points. It worked very well for that, and from the wargaming aspect, that was kind of how it was designed, was from that. And it isn't until we get into, I want to call the skill-based systems and things like that, or Call of Cthulhu, or something, which is a skill-based system, but you know what I mean? It starts changing for some of the aspects, but I also think that has worked really well for all the different types of games out there. For a video game, level-based makes a lot of sense, and it's used in just about everything, from Warhammer Total War. Your general goes up a level. You're like, okay, try put another point wherever you want it. And I think that's kind of it's driven a lot of that aspect. I think that as I've gotten older, I like, and I'm going to mention the Exalted or the White Wolf stuff, where it actually says you get experience points in the session if you cede the spotlight to someone else. And that, to me, really makes a big difference of now you don't have one person trying to be the melodramatic thespian that always has the spotlight. If they want that experience, they'll shift it to someone else. And I think that really does foster some good group dynamics from that aspect.
One game system that does that, one I've mentioned recently, is the Index Card RPG, where the spotlight is shifted as per the game mechanics. It goes around the table, and the spotlight shifts according to the initiative order throughout the entire game. So everybody has their time in the spotlight. Yes, you can interject and join in, but it's all based around the whole time structure of the game, and focuses on whichever character is in the spotlight doing something to fill that time before moving to the next character. And for the purpose of convention play, short, snappy, exciting adventures, convention play, it works really, really well.
I'm going to mention one other thing because I know we talked about milestone, but a little bit differently. Milestone also can be used for individual character milestones. Like the old anyone that's watched The Princess
You want to
Bride.
learn the secret of your father's death.
Yeah,
You've done that. Milestone.
Well, exactly. You're The Princess Bride. I'll join you with the group, but I'm looking for so and so. Well, you're going to go rescue the princess. I need to go find the man that killed my father. It encourages that, and it encourages the directions to go so players can start filling out their backstory, assuming they do a good backstory and not one that's
in a story-based campaign that works really well. Also, as far as talking about your video game comment and how far back experience points go, I mean, they predate RPGs by being things that were in war games. For long campaigns, you would accumulate experience points to show the improvement of your troops over a long campaign.
Oh yeah, well,
then they would level up from green to veteran to
Yeah,
I was level 30 at Pong.
Yeah. Well, there was that. That was that to be said is, well, what level did you get to on? I mean, it does affect a lot of
back
it.
when things just got faster to get harder.
Yeah.
Like life.
No, life doesn't get faster. We just get slower.
If it's like, well, you have to do something fast. Like, trust me, I don't have to go fast. That's just like whenever you watch someone run and they're like bouncing back and forth, like, and then you catch up to them and they're like, yeah, okay, I'll just do this. And like, how? Why? Like,
but Omanel, that comes with experience.
Yeah, well, that is true.
Oh,
and wisdom. It comes with both experience and wisdom. I want my plus.
There you go. If you really wanted to double down on your experience system in D&D, you could have it to where people have to make a wisdom check to see if they actually learned anything when they want to cash in their XP.
Oh yeah.
What did you learn, Steve? Roll.
Or penalize people with a low wisdom score. Like, you're in your wisdom column. You're like, okay, you have a low wisdom score. You have an XP penalty because it's harder for you to learn stuff because you're just harder to
Bare
put it.
Bones Fantasy has a really fun XP system. I'm just going to grab it really, really quick.
I'm going to bring in one other thing, which I think is the exact opposite of what they should have done in D&D. It should have been that the higher your stats are, the lower XP you get.
Character development. Here you go.
I think that they should have done it so if you had 9s, you got more XP than if you had 18s. Instead of giving you that 10% bonus, it should have been exactly the opposite.
Oh, you mean more bonus for being awesome? No. Here's a bonus for sucking. Okay.
Yes. So you're sucking characters.
You mean
that survive.
handicapping your character, basically?
well, you know what? There are systems that give you bonus XP if you have flaws, and I think that's actually kind of cool. It's like if you role play your flaw, you get it. But the ninth, but the character who has a 9 strength, who makes it up to 10th level, has probably knows a hell of a lot more than the 1800 character, and yet the 1800 character is the one that gets the experience points the faster. I think it should have been the exact opposite. It should have said, you know what? If you're between 9 and 12, you get 10%. If you get a +1, it's this. By the time you get like a +6, you get like -50 XP. And then players would have been like, do I want that super strong fighter?
Well, if you want to go that far, I would say, what they should have done is given experience bonuses only to people with high intellect and wisdom.
Because they're the only ones that can put it together.
They put it together. They process faster. They learn faster. Right?
I mean, you can go a long ways with how attributes should figure in. I mean, there's good arguments that intelligence should factor into your initiative. So I've even seen systems that put it in there. It's like, your intelligence, your initiative modifier is actually the average of your intelligence modifier and your dexterity modifier, because sure, you're maybe faster, but are you smart enough to recognize the opportunity to take initiative?
well, in old D&D, that's called surprise.
But we could spend hours trying to make it all realistic.
Well, I don't think
exactly.
realistic, but if you're trying to gamify the system, if you actually did it reversed, it would actually make the game more interesting. We're like, oh, do I want a fighter with an 1800
Yeah.
because they only get half the experience points as the guy who has a 12, huh? You know, that's
At the end of the day, it's important to remember that it is as much a game as it is anything else, and so it has to be gamey. And
Sure.
the gamier it is, the more it engages people to play it. I've even seen so a lot of the XP and all of that. No matter what system you're arguing about or discussing, it all comes down to what makes for a good game. I've even seen it argued that while you can unify the mechanic to be D20 and D&D, which they've done as much as they can, there is more engagement in having different systems that use different dice because it keeps the players engaging and doing little fiddly things, and it's more gamey and therefore more engaging and interesting for players. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a game, and it has to be gamey, otherwise you're just making up stories.
Mark Hawkman does make a good point here. Penalize too much, no one will play them. So talking about penalizing characters or whatever, no one will play them. So it's all about offering incentives, really, not penalties.
Right. Well, and that's why I was talking about, if you had made it so lower stats were higher, then it would encourage players not to play necessarily all the higher stats all the time.
Yeah, I think
penalizing the player who rolls really hot on the creation of his character. Now he gets penalized because his dice were hot.
No. He switches the dice around because now he goes, well, instead of having that 18 plus 0 strength, you know what? I'll put that in 18 in charisma.
But what if we're rolling down the line?
Who does that? You're just evil.
Tons of people.
No,
Tons of people roll down the line.
I know. I like the 3d6.
But hang on, let me just say my point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which is you're creating a Harrison Bergeron situation where you're punishing people for being exceptional, and that's not good either.
Yeah, D&D already has I think probably the most effective AD&D most effective way of working penalties into the game without making them feel punishing, and that's the attribute penalties for like a low attribute. It's a minor little niggling bit that can be overcome pretty easily, but at early stages it can get in the way. So like if you have a -1 because you have a low strength, you can still adventure. It's not going to cripple you. It's still a penalty. You're still going to feel it. But if you were to sit there and go, all right, well, you have a 10% XP penalty because you're good, that's really a double whammy. Because like Bear says, you're punishing them for being good.
I'm going to make a point that AD&D did reward failure. You got 1,000 experience points.
If you died and came back to life.
If you died and you were brought back to life, you got 1,000 XP.
Really?
In first edition, yes.
I have never resurrected a character in my history of D&D play ever.
You've never what?
Never had them
resurrect
a character in the history of D&D that I've played since 1985. Never. They were dead, and the guy immediately said, I'm making a new character, and moved on. There's none of this, we must go on a quest to get Bob's body back, because they'd all go, dude, we're going to spend a week in the woods with this body? No. That's just to be nasty, I'm like, okay, fair enough. But
I got resurrected once.
Yeah?
Well, I mean, I saw everyone talking about the resurrection. Yeah, it does because you lose 1 constitution point permanently. But the one thing is if you look at it, 1E has a high lethality, but then it also has a fairly easy where you can resurrect someone. So, it's like your first or second or third level, you're like, it's not a big deal. Once you get to about 3rd level plus, you're like, well, it's probably worth resurrection.
I want my character back. I've worked him up this high.
Yeah. Well, exactly. But the system actively, and this is one of the things, when you start, part of it just comes down to when we talk about games, what are we trying to recapture? And I try recapturing this, the books that I used to read where, resurrection generally doesn't happen. Well, in that case, you don't need to have a high lethality. Because but you need to have that balance between the two. If you have really high lethality, but you can come back pretty easily, death is an inconvenience and they have to pull your body out, which is where disintegration really becomes scary.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now we have to do a wish spell. But the rest of the time, you're like,
No, you don't have to disintegrate them. You just have to draw and quarter them and spread their bodies in 4 different directions.
Okay. I think Beeve Coog makes a a point here. There's certainly the second set here. All the focus is on high stats, and sometimes low stats make for great role playing. And certainly, if you do provide, if you do give XP for quality of role playing, which some DMs do, then it can be a benefit to have a low stat, because you can. I find a low stat does help feed the role playing. It does help encourage certain. You try and find a reason for that low stat, and you try and play it out a little bit. Awarding XP for playing substandard stats. Well, I would argue it doesn't award XP, but if you role play your flaws in 5th edition, you're supposed to be given inspiration. Yeah.
They're changing that now anyway.
If anybody ever remembers inspiration.
Yeah, well, they're changing it so that you get inspiration if you roll a natural 20.
We'll see if that actually happens, though, because there's so much of that system is still in.
No,
flux.
that got shot down in the feedback. People lost their minds over that. And they're like, okay,
I was surprised that they actually lost. They had really lost their shit over the natural 20 on skill checks, which I'm happy. Because it's never been a thing, but so many people play like it's a thing. Yet evidently more people don't play like it's a thing. Because boy, did they just burn that to the ground.
Well, they did inspiration for natural 20, but I thought it was better when they did inspiration for the natural 1.
That I agree with.
Yeah, because
roll a 1. Here's an inspiration for later, because you're about to get some School of Hard Knocks thrown up your ass.
Yes,
So
exactly, and that's just it. Is but that's the whole thing when you start looking at it. Is I don't mind. The problem that I have with it is, and it's been a while since I've looked at it for inspiration. Aren't you only allowed to have like one inspiration in the pool or whatever at a time? Yeah. And see, I would rather them allow it to have as many players are in the group are allowed to have that many points of inspiration.
Each player can have inspiration up to once at a time. It's not just one token that goes around.
Well, no, I meant, but it should be in a pool where they can all pull from it.
So I got rid of inspiration completely, and I created what I called inspiration cards, which are basically like little cards that do things. They have game effect, plot effect, what have you, and they get as many as their proficiency bonus, and then they play them, and they can always burn a card as opposed to using its effect to get that extra d20 to offset disadvantage. And they can trade cards and all that kind of stuff. And therefore, whenever someone did something really impressive or something cool or made me laugh or whatever, I'd throw them another card. It worked.
John Hungar just gifted 5 memberships.
Did he?
Yeah.
Didn't even know Hungar was here. Hello, Hungar. Thank you.
Omen, Mike,
wow.
Saxius,
must have dipped
and
into rogue
Justin
so
Thors.
Saxius
is lurking.
I'm going to give one other thing here with Bear, is if you've ever played Numenera or any of the Cypher systems, they do something very similar with that. It's like, here you can get a Cypher. Now, some of them can be intangible, which is, they'll actually say, oh, you have like kind of an inspiration that you can use. And the idea is to burn them. That's what's the whole idea of inspiration. But if you only leave it so it's 1 instead of like 2 or 3 per player, man, they hoard those things up to the point you're just like, just use it so you can get more inspiration.
I think 7th edition Call of Cthulhu handles that really well with the bonus die thing. If your player comes up with a really good way of handling something that should give them a benefit, you can say right there on the spot, have a bonus die, have up to 2 bonus dice. And it's anytime. It encourages role playing and yes, can it be gamified? Sure. But it's up to you as the keeper to determine if they actually get it. So they can fish for it all they want, but I think it's a good way to just keep that inspiration flowing, unlike 5th edition's inspiration that everybody always forgets. Like they forget they have it, the DM forgets to hand it out, but 7th edition is like, hey, you had a really good idea, or even the situation is better.
Tap into my Danish ancestry, wink wink. I'm going to bring it back on point to the experience thing, because I wanted to say this earlier, but we sort of got off on this thing. Bare Bones Fantasy has, I think, one of my favorite experience distribution systems I've seen in any game, which is there's no levels, so you get development points. And at the end of every session, you ask the players the following questions. 1, did their character survive the session? 1 DP. They get 1 DP for each of these. No. Did you make a successful ability check or a failed ability check? 1 DP. Did you make a skill check, successful or otherwise? 1 DP. And then this is where I like this. Can you state one previously unknown thing that your character learned about the realm or its people? That gets you a DP. For each of your, because they have descriptors for personality types, for each descriptor you demonstrated during the session, you get a DP. You'd be amazed how few players actually hit that one.
The bartender's name is Bob. Yeah, lucky guess. Give yourself a DP.
Exactly. Your character faced non-combat obstacles that required you to take an innovative role in overcoming. 1 DP. Notoriety. People witnessed your character's deeds in a way that will tell of them whether as fame or infamy. 1 DP.
Oh, I like
Personal.
that one.
Your character had a personal stake in the adventure. It's centered on family members, friends, contacts, etc. 1 DP. Victory. Your character engaged in combat and lived. 1 DP.
It doesn't say killed the opponent. It just says lived.
Lived. And success. The story had a main goal and it was achieved during this session. 1 DP. And that's how it works every session. And you can give bonus DPs if you want for role playing. But the whole idea is that it after, like, I ran a little bare bones fantasy on my channel. After a couple of sessions, once the players started realizing what they were going to get their DP for, they paid more attention to trying to take advantage of that stuff. And it worked really well. Well. Some of them started taking notes finally. Like, oh my God, they're taking notes. They're remembering NPC names. Oh, you know.
But see, to me, that comes back down to experience points encourages certain types of play.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons that, as much as everyone talks about these things, old school, that's great, to be fair. But man, I do prefer those kinds of systems where it's like you show up, 1 experience point. You made the other players look good, 1 experience point. You accomplished a goal, 1 experience point. And then some of them are, which is a little bit different, you still had to achieve a milestone. So just because you were there and you played, you did something, well, guess what? You did not break in and rescue the princess, so that you didn't meet that milestone. Until you meet that milestone, you don't get like bonus for those. And so it moves things along.
When I was running Marvel, sorry, go ahead.
No,
okay. So when I was running Marvel, it would drive me up the wall that when we were playing in the Marvel universe, my players could argue endlessly about the history of the Marvel universe for characters they weren't even playing. No, Doom and Reed Richards, they could argue forever. I had written a 20, 30-page timeline of my universe for my new campaign, which had the entire Golden Age, Silver Age, right up until they started playing, and it was broken down as a yearly timeline based on what Aaron Alston does in his Strikeforce book for Champions. So I did that. And then I introduced the Karma Quiz, which is at the start of every session. I would ask questions about the timeline. And if they could answer the question accurately, they would get karma for that session. Let me tell you, by the time we were halfway through a campaign, they knew the world. They knew the setting. They understood when an NPC was introduced that they had never met before, some villain. They'd be like, oh, crap, it's that guy. He did this thing back in 1962, blah, 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 blah. And as a result of giving them the direct currency of experience for knowledge, they invested more in the campaign and had more fun as a result.
That's cool. I don't know if I could pull it off, but that's cool.
But you know what? It's all too often I think that people look as not getting XP as punishment, rather than this is a reward for you really getting into there. Now, like John was talking about, when you are in the where it doubles in XP every time. Yeah, there you go. Wait. What's the other fist? That's going to be.
There's nothing on the other fist yet.
Yeah, but
Geek.
But then the other one was I'm sorry, but like you were saying, for that is the more that it's not punishment. If you don't want to invest in it, that's okay. And you're only going to be maybe a partial level behind. Maybe you do. Maybe we're only talking about 1 session behind, because a lot of it doesn't have to be high experience points. But like you're saying, someone is 20 experience points away from getting a level. 100 experience points makes a big difference just by like, oh, well, this one time you could have gotten that level to train, but you didn't get it this time.
That's why I always preferred to do it as bonuses on top of the standard XP that everybody's getting. Like, we're going through a D&D adventure, old school D&D type of stuff. Groups getting this, but you get a plus 100 for really great role playing. You get 50 for that cool deal you made with the Thieves Guild. And at most, any player in the group might hit level 1 or 2 sessions ahead of anybody else.
Yeah,
of course it's AD&D, so level ranges vary. But it was never a massive boost, but especially when you're talking about AD&D, where you might have to pour XP or something into creating an item or something to that effect as well. It
pouring
could count.
XP. I thought pouring XP into creating items was 3rd edition. Not.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Remember, I also pulled a lot of stuff from Dragon Magazine and stuff, so who knows where I got it.
Well, that does actually take me.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was about to say, Gene made a mention here. I've toyed with the D6 skill roll under stat, 3d6 for easy, 46 hard. I actually do that in my AD&D and my OSE games. If for want of, if the characters want to do, hey, do I remember, do I have a tidbit of knowledge, or can I track? It's like, all right, well, you're an elf, you can track, roll 3d6 against your intellect or whatever. If I wanted, you're a dwarf, you want to track, 5d6 for you.
well, and I think that's good. Is to be fair, that's very similar to what they have for.
Hello, Zatu.
What that reminds me of is the Horde's Iron Kingdoms role-playing game, where they did that. Where it's like, we get 2d6, then 3d6, and 4d6 up to 5d6. Depending on, of course, it was beat a number rather than the opposite. But I would do that. It's like with Gene, I'd probably do 2d6s for easy, 3d6s for standard, 4d6s for hard, 5d6 is extreme, 6d6 is nearly impossible.
I think it's a good way of doing it. I think that's Anyway, I think that we're veering off the topic though, going on to that sort of thing. So I want to drag us back a little bit, and it might be argued that I'm using this opportunity that Elfbait's not here to talk about something I know he likes. But I was going to start talking about this about 5 minutes ago, but I'll just let you continue. But the XP system in Marvel superheroes. Oh, Elfbait's back. I knew I'd wake him up. And I know Bear,
I was eating a cookie, man. I was trying to be polite.
I know Bear, you like a bit of Marvel superheroes as well, don't you?
What about it?
You like
the XP system, Karma.
Karma.
You can spend it to boost your rolls, or you can save it to boost your character.
Which no one does. And by the way, I'm going to say something, a caveat to that, which I think I've said before. Nothing pisses me off more in the superhero role-playing community than hearing these two arguments back to back. I want the game to be more representative of what comic books are like. I need a system where I can spend experience points to improve my character. Have you read a fucking comic? No one gets better at anything ever unless there's a story moment that comes in and changes the character dramatically. You don't get new powers.
Hell, they don't even age for 3 years.
Exactly. So stop telling me you want this 100% accurate comic book simulator, but you need experience points to improve your character. Fuck off.
Come on, how long was Kitty Pryde stuck as an awkward teenager?
Until she does the mini series with Wolverine where she learns to become a ninja, and now she's got a bunch of martial arts skills all of a sudden. That's how comics roll. So you have one of two choices with a superhero game. Either you're playing a goddamn comic book, at which point throw out the system and just sit around and tell a story together, because that's the way comic books work. The power of the writer is, compels you. Or accept that you're playing a game. Yeah. And it's not going to flow like a narrative comic book story.
And Marvel Superheroes is a good game. It's an entertaining
Perfect example. One of the best examples that captures the feeling of a comic book, but is still a game.
Yeah, because you're not going to advance fast in Marvel because powers are expensive.
Oh yeah,
and the power stunt system is really cool because you could get those powers a little earlier if you rolled lucky enough. But you'll never spend more than it would cost you to actually get a power.
And basically, you use your karma, your XP, to do something amazing in the moment, which is that feels like a comic book to me.
Exactly. Like I need to use my web to get the gun out of the guy's hand while it's held to the lady's head, and it's going to be really hard to get it. I need the extra. I'm going to spend some karma to make sure I hit it.
Yellow. Give me a yellow result, because otherwise you're not making that roll.
Exactly. It's like, so, and of course you're spending your XP. So if you're using it in the moment, you're not going to be using it to advance your character. So your characters stay at that nice little level for a good long time.
But one of the mistakes a lot of judges, is what they're called in that game, make is they forget the most important part about karma. It must flow like water.
Yes.
You must be constantly giving it to the players, and the players must be constantly spending it. Otherwise, it just turns into, it doesn't work. It just doesn't, it breaks. Like, it doesn't break, but it becomes less fun and exciting, right? So there's rules in place that really penalize characters for hoarding karma, because we have this one player in my game for years. His name was Mike, and Mike would always play this character called Galvanos, who was a Japanese robot come to life, and no word of a lie. Every time they would fight a telepath, at some point he would accidentally, not on purpose, kill the goddamn telepath. It became a trope. But in Marvel, if your teammate kills someone, you lose your karma too. Everybody loses their karma for being present at the murder. When the justification,
unless somehow somebody has casual killer.
no, this is, and they say it in the rules. This is why the X-Men keep such a close eye on Wolverine.
Right.
Because
Yeah, I
he's
remember
murder to a karma pool. He's murder to your karma.
It's doubly bad with Wolverine because he doesn't take any penalties for karma. So
Actually, he does.
he's got the casual killer talent.
That's a fan made bullshit. There's no casual.
It's in the Marvel books.
It wasn't in the original. It wasn't in the original. It may have come back in one of the alternate.
Must I prove you wrong, sir?
Well, it's not in that one. No,
In the yellow box.
It's the game.
no, but it's in like what is it? The After the Bomb supplement or whatever it is.
But after the bomb is, you're talking. I don't know what you're talking about, but that
Palladium.
is bullshit.
I'm not After the
After
Bomb.
the bomb's Palladium.
Well,
No, it's the other one. It's the mutants the Atom. Children of the Atom is what I was
Children
thinking.
of the Atom. I'm gonna look for that. I don't recall that.
Now, if you're right, it's fine.
If I'm wrong, I'll admit it. But if I'm right, what do I get, Elf?
I can't give you anything. I can mail you some of my wife's cookies. But,
Diabetic, I can't eat them.
well, I can waft odors of the cookies at you.
Mail me an envelope. Oh, cookies.
And there's
with a picture of them. No, I mean,
regardless of rule yelling, everyone house ruled it. Everyone house ruled it.
Yeah.
Everyone. I even put in house rules, which was.
I always thought casual killer was part of the game. That's why.
If you kill someone and you're a hero, you lose all your karma, and everybody on your team loses 100. That's how I used to do it. But I also introduced negative karma, because in Marvel, I kill that first member of the Hellfire Club Goon Squad, I'm at 0 karma. It means there's going to be a lot of dead Hellfire guys because I can't go lower than 0. So I had to introduce a penalty, which is if you continue killing, you'll go into negative karma.
Yeah.
And once you reach the total of your reason, intuition, and psyche in negative karma, congratulations, you're a villain now.
Yeah,
Like,
the important thing you said though was about the karma flowing, and in Marvel they keep it flowing by getting karma, like at least small amounts of karma for doing relatively mundane things. They give you a good list of examples, like Peter Parker going to have tea with Aunt May +5 karma. You know?
Wouldn't you, for example, though, use the popularity stat? If karma drops too low, you could knock popularity down, because and then if you hit your popularity hits a certain level.
Okay, so the popularity, as someone who loves Marvel, I mean, I'm 25 years almost. I ran that game almost exclusively, and I'm not kidding. It was a long run. Started in the 80s, ended in the 2000s. Popularity is broken, does not work, and is stupid.
Okay, there we go.
But tell us how you really feel about it.
Oh, okay. Anyway, that's the problem with the popularity. The mechanic doesn't work well. The only thing that's going to, you get a bunch of players together who grew up in the Bronze Age, the 80s, reading comic books. You say, well, your popularity is really low. No one likes you. They're like, yay, we're heroes on the run. We're the X-Men. We're fighting against society now. You have negative 50 karma. Ah, shit. I can't do things in a fight. Oh, crap. You know what I mean? Like, there's a different mentality in the response at that point in time. So while the popularity might make for nice storytelling moments, it won't curb homicidal player behavior in a superhero game.
Yeah. Well,
and karma losses will.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
well,
trust me.
Well, I also like the fact with the villains in that game that they only get karma if they kill them in a diabolical, contrived fashion.
Well, the whole idea being, right, is that the villains get experience for doing villainy things and getting one up on the heroes, right? Well, the point is that you shouldn't even be tracking that. the villain should just have a pool of damn karma. You know what I mean? That they can burn through in the fight.
Well, I understand something, but part of it is that it encouraged the DM in this case to not just kill them off and say, "Oh, there's a reason I'm tying you up over the sharks with laser beams." That was the typical. Yeah,
I see your point. I'm just
Well, I mean, but that was the real point of when you actually. Well, it even says in the book that's why they just don't kill them off and just shoot them.
Yeah.
It's like and I said, okay, it needs to be that yin yang aspect of we just don't kill off the villain. We just don't kill off the hero because I'm going to lose all my villain karma. Okay, that's not worth it. He wants his karma too, so he has to do it in an inventive way. Yes, Mr. Bond. I don't, you expect me to talk. No, I expect you to die as he leaves him with a laser beam, cutting him.
It'd be a very cheap funeral.
Yeah.
I expect you to buy cookies from my daughter. I'm James Mason, the Bond villain. No, you're right. And listen, at the end of the day, Marvel was not a perfect game, but it was awesome. And once you understood the system, the karma flow, power ranks, all that kind of stuff, there was nothing you couldn't do with that game. And you didn't need super complex rules as a skeleton to do it with, like, say, Champions or Villains and Vigilantes or a lot of these other ones, right? It gets a little crazy. So the nice part about the mechanical experience point system being a commodity and a commodity that you spent really made the characters who got the most experience become the most useful. Unless they had shitty rolls. And then it cost them a fortune. So it all balanced out. It was a really great way to do things. I really love that system. Still do to this day.
I'm going to mention, we were talking about experience points, but, I'm going to mention if you have to build characters from scratch, like because you mentioned Champions and a few others, where you built it from scratch using karma. We'll use Shadowrun as the example. Where it's like, oh, you can use this super complicated method that takes forever to get them up there. And then it tracks one for one. That's okay in certain cases, but man, what a pain to have to deal with. But it did allow you to create the kind of characters that were those high levels if you wanted to use those kind of experience points. Like, okay, D&D was fairly easy. It's like, if I want a 5th level character, this is what your experience points is. This is what you should have. Boom. Whereas in the other ones, you have to build them from scratch and then get them up to that equivalent level. Let's say, oh, you're playing with 600 karma. You're like, oh my God, this will take forever. And that's where you go, okay, something should work better organically.
Not wanting to interrupt you on your flow, but just quickly check chat, now.
Yes. What's the theme?
The B word.
That B word again.
Well. If you're doing it from karma, it is effectively building it because you have to do all that.
As you know, I never like the concept of building a character. I don't.
Well, this is part of the reason that I do like whether it's Traveler or some of these others. It's a little bit different for character generation. Is roll and it's organic. It feels organic. You're not really big, and that's. That again, that's where D&D does a pretty good job. You're not building a character; you're rolling a character, and then you go. But if you're doing Champions, you're building a character. You're using all those points in there, and you're just going, "All right, how am I going to do this?" Or Shadowrun if you're using certain ones. And it feels very gamey from that aspect. This feels organic.
I will say that as much as you may dislike the term "build," there are some systems where building characters is really the only way to do them well. In a superhero game, trust me, rolling random characters,
oh my God,
sucks. You have to build a character in a superhero game.
Do you ever read Villains and Vigilantes?
A long time ago.
Yeah. One of the things I love about Villains and Vigilantes is random character creation, and it gets really wacky and gonzo sometimes, but it can be cool. If you pick up any of their villain roster books and read the villains and their powers, it's clear in the original ones. Maybe later ones not so much, but in the original ones, like the original Most Wanted and stuff like that, Jack and Jeff sat down and rolled those villains up and then made them based on the rolls. Because there's characters that have like the weirdest combinations of powers, but they made something cool out of it, and it was really kind of cool. One of the reasons I don't like build superhero games is because build superhero games lead to mechanics that require, well, I want to do this. Well, do you have that as an extra? No, I don't. Well, then you can't do it. Meh. Marvel, hi, I'm the high priest of Marvel. One of the things it does that's really well that I think is a strength that I put in Mighty Superheroes is what I call the heroic way of making a character, which is instead of going to a list of powers and going, well, I'm going to take energy blast, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to take that, go, what do your powers do? Well, I can shoot eye beams out of my eyes. Cool. How far do they go? I don't know. They go 180 feet. Okay, great. So write down eye beams 180 feet. We're going to give it a rank. There you go. That's your power. Done. As such, you're not beholden to the game. You're beholden to your own creativity. So yes, you're building, as Elf says. Sorry to bring up the B word there, Yog. But it is something. You know what I mean?
I'm
Vindicated!
I have to put this admission up on screen.
What is really bad is what this means is that the power gamer who we code DM'd back and forth back in the day, who I got into the game with in like 8th grade, was fucking lying to me the whole time.
What? A teenager lied about something in a role?
No, but it's like funny. It's like he made a really good case for it, and like I just like while we were chatting away, I was skimming through all my PDFs and stuff. Like I'm like I can't find it. It's nowhere unless it's in some obscure Marvel file somewhere. I'm like I can't find it. So yeah, he made up a reason to because like all his characters had freaking casual killer.
Of course they did. Listen, I'll take delivery of that envelope of cookie odor as soon as possible. Thank you.
He's gonna be like, well, okay, I want them vacuum sealed so they stay fresh. Instead,
I'll come onto your show and you can ring a bell and yell shame at me.
Oh, I like that.
Oh man.
And somebody will show up and with a citation. No, it's real. It's here. It's in this page. This and such and such, and then the worm will turn.
No, I mean, what's funny is it does sound like
challenge accepted.
The scary part about it, and the reason that it's probably stuck in my head so long, is it does sound like a very reasonable rule that they might make for an exception on a write-up for one of the character profiles.
What we did as a house rules, we had alignment. We added not alignment. We added side to the game.
Yeah.
There was heroic, villainous, and neutral. So heroic characters were bound by a bunch of heroic rules. Villainous characters were bound by a bunch of, all related to karma, clearly.
Yeah.
And neutral characters could kill, but they got no karma for it. And if they killed while working with heroic people and the heroic people didn't try and stop them from killing, the heroic people lost karma for it. So it would allow us to have like Catwoman and stuff like that type of characters who could live in that gray area between hero and villain.
And I think it's also important narratively to realize what the loss of all your karma actually means for a hero. That is those points in the comic where the character kills and spends the next 4 issues just melancholy and just, oh, what did I do? I could have saved that person. You know?
Or they're Wolverine who goes on the killing rampage against the Hellfire Club, and all those guys show up later as the Reavers with cybernetics now coming for revenge.
And the rest of his team walks in and just absolutely horrified at what he did.
Anyone who's got mod ability, I give you permission to mute General Nut.
What did he do wrong? What did General Nut do wrong?
He's building a stealthing character, and John's favorite. Okay.
Hey, don't forget to dip into Rogue to increase your increase your stealthing ability in your build.
I don't allow stealth to be used as a verb, and I get very stroppy when people start saying I stealth. It's like it's not a verb.
Hey, John, we'll verb however the hell we want to verb.
Well, no. This comes back to when I was in grade school, and the teacher would yell at us for using the word party as a verb. Anyway. Which, of course, I'm like, well, you understand English is a mutable language like the Borg. Anything and everything. Yeah.
I get to tell you my 2 favorite quotes of all time about the English language, and this should make Yog just. Because I used to say this when I was a teacher, because I picked it up from various places, which was the following: 1, the English language traveled the world, beating up other languages and rifling through their pockets for loose grammar, and the English language was created by Norman invaders who were trying to get with Anglo-Saxon girls. The resulting language is as legitimate as the resulting children.
Oh, I'm going to bring this up. And I found this out. Is the English language has at least no. You're joking about that, but the English language has at least twice as many words as any other language out there, by my understanding.
It's because we have
taking from
5
other
different
languages.
words for the
Yep.
same thing.
Yeah.
Listen, until the Normans brought the word "boof," beef didn't exist in English, right? It was cow, boof. Oh, beef. Okay, chicken, poulet. Oh, poultry. Okay, pig. Pork. That's the beauty of the English language, which is why I get really annoyed by people who try to get all poncy about the English language and having all these rules. I'm like, fuck off. It's a bastard language. It's adaptable, and that's what made it able to become the business language of the world.
It can be very specific, because remember, at one time all grain was corn.
Cheers, Daniel. Cheers, Daniel.
But no, I mean, those are, but like but that to me is the great thing about having a good experience system, because it encourages these players to do this, and Marvel really did that a good job, like you're saying. And the other part is I could do X. I can either improve my rolls, which, to be fair, Numenera is doing. I think they stole it from some of these things. I can use this to improve my rolls. I can do it to magically gain a skill during it, or I can get it for the normal skill, but applies to everything.
Well, Marvel didn't invent the expendable XP system. No. It just did a really good job. The nice thing about that massive karma penalty is that you really feel it just as much as your hero should feel it. When your karma drops from wherever it was to 0, you're as gutted as that. On. Yeah, you're as gutted and demoralized as that character in the comic book would be.
And there's still Doombots to spare. Ah, crap. And you're done.
Well, it's not just that. It's also the fact that when you're just ready to get that extra one more rank, because you went up by like 1 point at a time, you're like, I can get it from, what was it? Amazing. Was it incredible to amazing, or amazing to incredible? Whatever it was.
Amazing. You can do the crest across. Yeah.
And you're like, no.
But the thing is, as a judge in the Marvel game, you control what they spend their karma on. They're getting a little. They're pulling up a lot of karma. Well, time for a big battle royale, crazy, all stakes on the line fight where they're going to have to spend a lot of karma to survive, and then they'll have nothing left. Yay! And that way you can have fun. I had players.
That's why the power stunt rule exists too, to keep players from getting asked out of getting new powers by judges. It's a very good balance.
But no, it's no. I'm going to disagree with you on that one. The power stunt rules were broken because they were too expensive. 100 karma per shot, like that was a lot. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah, but at the end of the track, you're still only spending the same amount of karma as it would just.
Yeah, that was the thing. We were trying to balance it out. I just turned it into a reason feat, which was basically make a reason feat. The first time you're doing it, make a red reason feat. Second time you're doing it, make a yellow reason feat. Okay, now the next 8 have to be green reason feats to show that a smarter character can think of more ways to use their powers creatively versus, Lenny the Brick, who's like, I'll punch him. Oh.
No, but what I was saying is that the power stunt was a way to keep a judge from stripping you of all your karma by making you have to fight.
No, for sure.
Because you get to keep those steps in the power stunt. So if you can sneak in 100 and 100,
yeah. And the thing is, it still costs you 1,000 karma at the end of the day to successfully make a power stunt. Not counting in karma you spent on the rolls.
Yeah.
You had to pay 100 each time, and you had to do it 10 times. 1 red, 1 yellow, 8 greens before it becomes a permanent power that you can call on anytime you want.
Yeah.
So it got costly.
But doesn't it cost like 1,000 to just flat out buy a new power?
But you shouldn't be able to just buy a new power because
I'm saying rules as written.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, because we can all play style and house ruling. That's fine, but if we're talking about rules as written, while it's costly, it's still no more costly than being able to save up 1,000 karma. Good luck with that.
Listen, before we turn this into the strengths and weaknesses of the Marvel superheroes game, perhaps we should focus back on experience points.
No problem.
No. Karma is experience. You mentioned that.
No, but we're getting off on like other problems.
Yeah, John. I'm sure John has other experiences he wants to move on to.
We're in the rambling phase anyway, aren't we?
Like bedtime, anyways.
I'm going to mention one other thing. You're talking about karma. I'm going to mention Shadowrun. Specifically, I think it was 2nd edition, where as players got karma, it started going into a karma pool.
Yeah.
So then they could, as they began to get playing, is not only did they use their own karma to increase their stats, it also went into a pool that they could use as a group, and
Yeah.
that makes a big difference.
They have that in Marvel.
Because, yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, but that's nice. Well, it's a permanent pool. You can't like lose it for the most part, which was nice.
Oh yes, you can. In
Come on.
Marvel,
No, he means
No,
in
Shadowrun.
Shadowrun.
I've never played Shadowrun.
Okay, so in Shadowrun you would do that, which really encouraged players to play the same character. Because I always got so fed up with the guy go, "I'm bored of my character. I'm going to switch." You just switched 2 weeks ago. Could you stop like creating a new character every 2 weeks? It's one of these things. But yeah, but that encourages that long time play, which also gives you that whole idea of a troop. Hey, guess what? We can all form together. And when we're in this one mission together, we are the baddest kick-ass team that's out there. Whereas if you bring the new guy, it completely messes everything up. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
No, there's merit to that, I guess.
Yeah.
I will say, I mean, my list of notes I'd made before the stream have pretty much all been crossed off now. I'd got define milestone XP, the difference between milestone XP and milestone leveling, issues with XP for special actions, quest experience points, needs to be a major success or achievement, not just constant drip, XP for gold, spending, for example, Marvel, specific, specific game systems do work with milestone, whereas others don't. Too much work. I want to thank Omen Al for bringing that one in. Where the excuse of it that it is too much work. What happens when sessions are missed? XP for doing new things. Multi-classing I've got here, and define experience points versus training points. Those were my main notes. So
I'm going to ask this because we talk about multi-classing. What was your
let's go
multi-classing? Because that was the one we kind of touched on it, which is you still stay close, but I was just wondering what your unless you're talking about second edition, which is a mess if you have to track all the XP for something that's triple classed.
Yeah. In AD&D, I like AD&D multi-classing. I like the fact that a properly multi-class character, such as a demi-human, a fighter mage thief, whatever, starts off as a real sort of utility character that can do a bit of everything, but they gain very slowly. But they're always ever 1 or 2 levels behind the rest of the party because of the way the XP tables work. So you'll be at 2-2-2 when most people are at 4. You'll be at 3-3-3 when most of the party are around 5. And you're never that far behind in terms of the power curve. It looks daunting to start with. And yes, that first level is difficult. Those first 3 levels are difficult. But I like the way it works. And the way it spreads out across the classes. And I like the AD&D rules for dual classing, in that you have to just stop and relearn, because I consider classes to be like professions. So you have to really work at a new profession to be good at it.
And I'm going to come back to
I'm old school like that.
Well, but you know what's interesting is everyone looks at I know we were talking about the Bard, which is your ultimate dual classing character. But if you actually look at the Bard, when you add up the total XP, they actually, by the time that the players, let's assume that they're all 9th level, by the time they hit 10th level, that Bard is like 9th level Bard.
Yeah, depends how far they go as a fighter to start with, because the fighter is the main XP sink.
Well, even if
the fighter is also the main survivability of the Bard, though. That's the thing.
But I mean, even when they get to 7th level, then they start again at the 1st level for Thief. By the time that they would be an 8th level fighter, they've already maxed out that Thief level, and they're back to Bard. So by the time that they're at 9th, they catch up very, very quickly. And you know, the one thing that you're talking about with a multi-class, if depending on how high you let them go, is it really a single class human really doesn't begin to get way ahead until you start getting past that 9th or 10th level, where it's a fixed XP, and then they're splitting among 3, and you're only going for 1, so you're advancing 3 times as fast.
Yes.
But until then, you're advancing. You're only getting 1 level above them, and maybe 2 if they're going to be triple class fighter magic user or something.
But you take into account the various level caps, because I use the level caps for various races. So.
I was referring to if they have really high stats, then they can get up higher. You know, depending on which. This is where I think Unearthed Arcana. This is why I loved it when it came out, but I thought it was complete crap in retrospect because it blew apart a lot of the balance issues.
One of the nice things about I like the adjustments they made in Earth Arcana to the multiclassing level limits, because most of them remained very, very similar. And if you had a single class dwarf fighter, they're allowed to go 2 levels higher than what was stated on the chart, which is fine, absolutely fine. I think an Earth Arcana did sort that out very nicely. There were other parts of Earth Arcana which I don't like, but I think that part was fine. Anyway,
I'm opposed to multi-classing. It ain't right. Taint. I'm again it. Tain't right.
Well, and actually, I know that this is where John and I were talking about, where he wanted to see those classes. Well, I actually like class as race for them.
Me too.
Because then it says, well, I want to play an elf. Well, okay, that's what you get to play as an elf. But I said, no, if you want to play a cleric, then you go play a human. Though actually, I know how John's doing it, and he and I have talked about this, but I think that it's good is you can either pick your class as race, or you can pick a single class as your
and of course, if you pick a single your class as race, race as class, sorry, then you are effectively, because I haven't allowed multi-classing, but you are effectively a multi-class, because
for the elf, the others are not so much.
Well, the halfling is a fighter thief cross, really.
Not really.
They've got the hiding abilities. They've got the hiding.
That's it. But that's it. They've got the hiding ability than nothing else. They have their own other little abilities. They're more fighter than thief.
They are more fighter than thief.
They got that AC bonus against large creatures, and they can use any of the short weapons and armor.
Well, here's the other thing, though, a little bit different, which is we're talking about this, is the halfling as a halfling class gets a far better saving throw than if they're a halfling fighter.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are bonuses for doing it, but you're limited. You're not going to go up nearly as high in most cases. But yeah, I like that.
I've come to appreciate it for sure. But I like it both. I mean, OSC, I play race as class in my OSC game. I definitely wouldn't use the AD&D or the advanced OSC split. But I love the split in AD&D. AD&D does it well. There's enough of the pros and the cons for each choice. And yes, sorry, Bear, but I too am a booster of multi-classing and dual classing.
It's okay, guys. Listen. There ain't no wrong, bad fun.
Well, if you aren't having fun, you're playing it wrong. I mean, that's
in any case,
unless it's for a job, I think people forget about that. It's called a job if you're not having fun.
No, absolutely. I'm not a fan of multi-classing. It's just never something. It annoys me, and it's just a thing for me. I appreciate people loving it, and I appreciate people use it for their builds, and that's fine that they can do that.
I don't know how you can build a character in OSC.
To address the point that Sean said earlier, though, it's all elf propaganda, sir. All of it. Ever since Tolkien wrote his stupid books, it's always about how great the elves are. Every goddamn fantasy world, the elves are the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Actually, you know what? I will say this.
Elf propaganda. What was that? Sorry, what?
Have you ever looked at Symbaroum?
Yeah, I know. There's tons of games where they try and be different by making the elves less great or more mean or whatever. But it's still, the elves just never suck. Is my point.
There's even in Symbaroum, they're like just super. Yeah. They're like Tolkien elves, but turned to black metal.
That is why you impose level limits. That is why when that person who takes
set your high elves on evil, but
person who takes that elf fighter, what do you mean I'm stuck at 5th level? Elves suck. Well, you thought they were gods.
Yeah.
Wait.
Screw you, Galadriel.
Well, this is where the drow come in, and you come in on like, oh, you failed. You now become a Drider. It's like, there's
or you succeeded and Loth really likes you. You become a Drider.
Yeah.
well, no, but I mean, those are the things that it's not that, and I understand what you're talking about with elves, but some of it is like you were never intended to play like the elves in Symbaroum for the most part. That's what I know that they put them in there. Everyone puts stuff in there. You go, it was never intended to be that way, but they put it in there anyway. And then players like, I want this. Fine.
I just find it amusing that the earlier elves in D&D are not actually all that Tolkien-y in their physical description. They're all short as fuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's something else about elves that I bet almost nobody ever plays, but you have to play the racism of elves and orcs. Orcs in AD&D very specifically kill elves on sight. They do not take elven prisoners.
They have a religious grudge.
Yeah, they hate them. So it's like, all right, your team is fighting. They get captured by orcs. So the orc comes up to the elf. You are now dead.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Fanrail.
Well, I mean,
I mean, if you're
what-
playing your elf right, you should be all aloof and snotty towards everybody anyways.
So one of the best examples of that, though, for the concept of drow, for me, that I loved was someone who once said, if surface elves hated orcs as much as they hate drow, there wouldn't be an orc left in the fucking world. Yet now everybody wants to have their drow show up in the party, and it's like, when I run a fantasy game and someone wants to play a drow, I'm like, you really sure you want to do that? Yep.
Yeah.
I make sure that there's at least one or two elves that they meet who are like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, and like, you know, like they're like, that's it.
Well, the whole thing of, you know, when you look at the original drow were not that numerous. That's the other thing. It's you know,
drow have always been the exception.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the things that bugged me the most when they started rewriting the drow in fifth ed. They were trying to correct a problem that didn't exist. The drow were the exception. They were the break of the monoculture. They were, you know, that one community. Even Forgotten Realms drow, while they had multiple cities, were still not as numerous as the other elves. They were drow for a reason, and even they had they weren't a monoculture. There was still some little chinks in the armor of that draconian drow society, because you had some kind of neutrally evil drow gods, and there was Elestrehi, there was like this weird
That all
little
came
witch cult
later,
of
though.
drow and stuff like that. Yeah, it came in second edition.
Yeah.
But my point is that the drow have always been the exception anyways, and so trying to make exceptions for the exceptions was just a little unneeded and superfluous. Which I guess is also a superfluous comment, because unneeded and superfluous are the same thing.
Originally in Greyhawk, drow did not exist on the surface.
Yeah,
they were just there, and the way they were portrayed when they first appeared is that they were very much monsters from the underground. And they were the sort of things that they'd not been seen on the surface for millennia. And there were rumors that they were simply a figment of elven folklore to make young elves behave themselves.
I mean, even let's be honest, the thing that made Drizzt a cool character is the fact that he was an exception. He was a drow on the surface, and then everybody's like, I want to play Drizzt.
Well, that's why I knew Elminster was evil, was the picture of him hanging out with the drow chick at the lake. It's like, wait. He's hanging out with a Nazi? Like, that's the effect of it, right? Like, he's literally having dinner with Ava Braun? What the hell? That means he's evil.
Speaking of hanging out with drow, I remember the old cover for the book that covered the underworld of Forgotten Realms in Waterdeep. And it shows the crime bosses. A drow, an illithid, and a beholder, and a human. I'm like, he's the guy I'm the most afraid of. What freaking human can stand in a room with a drow, a beholder, and a mind flayer and be considered on equal footing with those guys?
Well, I mean, if you look at the classic monsters, Yuan-Ti and drow for D&D, those were your two big, background.
Yuan-Ti are just like classic, weird fantasy villains. Snake men.
That was the Conan stuff, but they were infiltrating all of society, and you would know, that was the reason they had the 3 levels of them. It's like, oh, this one looks perfectly human. They're the ones infiltrating. And it wasn't until you got into the really terrible snake men that you're like, oh, I'm screwed. But that's part of the reason but that was that's what made some of these things great. The problem was, like you're talking about, they've made too many of the monsters common up to the point people just yawn. It's just like the whole idea of the tiefling. The tiefling is a fantastically cool idea. You have demonic blood in you, and instead it's just like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. I'm like, what the hell? We're talking like Omen level stuff is what it's supposed to be.
Even the 5th ed book says the tiefling is subject to lots of discrimination and they're outcasts, and yet how many people ever play it that way. I mean,
Well,
look at the movie. Look at the movie. The tiefling in the
yeah.
movie.
But to be fair, everybody's always played D&D in the way that they wanted to, no matter what the edition. Because I'm on record through many streams of having played a very different AD&D than most of you guys.
Fair. I think all of us can
Well,
say that. My problem with the Monster 5e race thing is that they've turned D&D into the Mos Eisley fucking cantina.
Yeah.
It's just you walk into a fucking bar and there's 12 dwarves in the corner and a beholder in the back and a fucking Illithid bartender and a 3 genasi and a this, and it's like, Jesus Christ.
If that's the campaign you want, cool, but
it's cool and it's fun and it's neat, but if you have any modicum of verisimilitude in your campaign, this society is going to burn itself to the ground at some point.
I have a place like that in my campaign, my 5e campaign, but it's not the rule. I've got this place called the Vagabond Seas, which is a whole campaign in and of itself. It's a nautical campaign setting, but it exists in my world. And you'll go into a bar and find, some funky race behind the bar there because it's the Vagabond Seas. It's where everybody just kind of trickles down to and kind of imagine an entire archipelago that is Mos Eisley, with a East India style company overlording over it. So,
I mean, that's I think that's the problem. If they've watered everything down instead of, and I don't know. For me personally, as part of the idea was to explore. If you're in the human realms, and this is why I said, okay, you have a dwarf and an elf. Okay, they're good races, halflings, gnomes. You understand why they're there. The half-orc is the one that didn't seem to make the most sense for why they were there. But you're like, oh, okay, so we have this in here, and then you move on, and it's like, oh, I'm going to go explore this part of the world that I don't know where it is. And that, to me, was part of the fun of adventuring. It isn't just getting the level. It's to go explore new things. It's the Star Trek. Go explore new worlds. Well, go explore new dungeons. Go find out the mysteries of the world. Go out and see monsters that have never been there before. And this is the big disadvantage of being a DM. Well, let me rephrase that. Of me wanting to know everything is I buy all the books and I kind of spoil it for myself for finding something new and cool.
That's why I make my own stuff.
Yeah, I'm a homebrew GM myself. I do like building a world where the different races have their own kingdoms and spaces. I mean, you might find rare examples of them in nearby kingdoms, but I think that in what I try to build in my worlds is instead of like having a world where you have like 8 million human nations, half the nations out there are going to be by the different humanoids and demi-human species, because it's easier to justify that many intelligent species on a planet.
So in my setting, the only people with nations are humans. They're the only ones who think this idea is a good idea of living together under a common flag and having cities and rulers, and everybody else does whatever their people do. The dwarves live in their mountain halls. The elves live
clans,
in their woodland, sanctuaries. The halflings just kind of float around wherever they can go and farm and be happy with that. There's one orcish nation that's forming right now, but it's because of a religious thing that's happening to them. Otherwise, there's no, we can't go there. Why? That's the Genasi nation. And then you go there and it's like a bakery and an inn and the town hall. And you're like, this is just cosplay. This isn't interesting. This isn't different. This is just, let's go to the Elven bakery,
in my current game, I've got a couple of wood elf populations, and they're very different from each other because the guys in that one forest are dark, and you could barely call them wood elves. They're really not friendly. They're not Legolas.
Yeah. But that's the wood elves can go from Legolas to painted psychos who are going to kill you if you wander into their forest.
Yeah, that's kind of these guys. They wear spooky masks, and they, have weird little tree dragons that go with them as hunting animals. And
well, isn't that Birthright? There's two breeds of elves: the ones that hunt and murder humans on sight, and the ones that are somewhat friendly. You don't know which you'll meet. If you meet an elf, it could be either or.
I mean that's part of the reason I like and how they do with Symbaroum. And some of them, it's like, okay, you're in the dregs, but you're like, well, what about the elves? And it's kind of like, it's the Hellboy for anyone that isn't familiar with Symbaroum. we made a pact. You're breaking the pact, so we kill any one of you that comes across this.
Yeah.
Like, well, wait a minute. It's like, no, this was your line. This is our line. We take care of the forest. You're not allowed in there. And you're like, you're breaking it. And I kind of like that whole sense of danger. The whole idea that you can just wander around as if it's a modern 19, like modern day United States or Canada, where you just go hop on a road and you go walk down and you're okay. The worst thing you might have is a traffic jam. That's, oh, okay. Well, there are a few evil people out there, but for the most part, don't worry about it. I think that has removed what I look for in a fantasy game is, look, it's scary to leave the town. Yeah, there's another town over here, but at that, the Borderlands, there's a reason that Borderlands is dangerous, and that's why players start there. Because that's where the adventure is.
I have something to say. I'm going to say something positive about 4th edition and watch everybody throw things at me.
Nah.
That's the beauty of the points of light concept for the setting. The idea that, yes, you're in a town. Welcome to civilization. There are walls. There are guards. There are maybe street lamplighters, whatever the case may be. You're safer here. Hi, you've left town. Good luck. You're in the woods now. Good luck. Like there's shit out there that wants to kill you and doesn't care.
Well,
I've heard good things about the points of light setting. I mean, I don't know.
Menfir Vale is one of the best settings ever made. Sorry,
I don't know anything about it because I skipped 4th edition and I played one session of it and hated the mechanics. But so I never looked into the setting that accompanied it. But I have heard good things about Menfir Vale.
Menfir Vale is just.
Well, I'm going to say that's part of what attracted me with Dark Sun. It's like, well, you don't go off into the desert alone. It sucks to be in the city, but there's a reason everyone's hanging out in the city. Do you want to be a slave or do you want to die out in the, of thirst, dehydration, and giant monsters? Like, oh, well, let me see.
Well, here's a question. Do you guys enforce actual realistic travel rules, as in supplies on your players?
Yeah.
Because I don't think people understand how much supplies you need to carry.
I go so far as I actually have a calendar for my campaign world that I use. There's a great calendar app. It tracks the moons and everything like that.
Oh,
and
nice.
so like and I constantly reinforce with my players, well, a week ago yesterday was the winter harvest and you guys are still out. So I keep reminding them how much they've missed home as as a way to also enforce that. Just all these little things. Like I have them track supplies. I have them make sure that they have ways to get places, and over time they're figuring out like, hey, to get to the wizard in the woods that we always need to go to, he lives in the woods with the really nasty elves, so it's at least 2 days through the woods, but we can cut that down by going upriver to this point where the forest is narrow. So they've figured that out over trial and error and experience, and so they've had to go 2 weeks out of the way or 3 weeks out of the way before, from time to time. And so, yes, I do that. And it really works because it's made them think about, like in the current game, they're like, oh my God, that's a lot of back and forth across a large span of time. Maybe we should go see if ye old wizard will be willing to help us fast travel a little bit.
I fuck them on. You don't sleep in your armor for the most part, or you're not always wearing your armor all the time. You know what I mean? Like, stop thinking that you spend 24 hours a day in full plate armor. Just
soldiers may have done that back in the day, but not by
out
choice.
of necessity during a time of war.
Exactly.
Right. In my Middle Earth game, I haven't been totally strict with it all, but I have certainly brought in elements of what's happening during travel, what precautions people need to take, how the weather's affecting things, people they meet along the way, allies friendships they forged along the way. All these sort of things have cropped up. So, and my players are doing a good job of outfitting themselves. Look, I only tend to really focus on it if I think the players are taking the mickey a bit, but where the players are actually paying attention to it and planning and preparing and making sure they've got horses or carts with enough supplies, enough grain for horses, hay for the horses or whatever, a few barrels. Exactly. Yes. Adventures in Middle Earth. Good book.
I use the travel rules for that, even in my D&D.
So good for that stuff. So good.
I'm going to mention the other part here is if anyone's looked at Forbidden Lands, travel is one.
Only you have looked at Forbidden Lands.
What's that?
Only you have looked at Forbidden Lands.
Well, I mean, if you look at Forbidden Lands, it has everything's broken in quarter days. Depends on how fast you can move, and then it takes a certain part of building a fire, foraging for food, camping, and your character can fight and win against whatever, and then you might freeze to death up to the point, and it's like
you like Hernmaster, don't you? I get that feeling you like Hernmaster.
No, that's Squirrel Hermit.
I've never played Hernmaster, to be honest. As I've never played Space Master or any of the others that they had out there. But
so Hernmaster for Hern, which is ironic because I'm interviewing one of them tonight from Columbia Games. The first time I ever played it back in the 90s, one of the guys with us got bit by a horse and died of infections.
Yeah, Harn is ultra realistic fantasy role playing, and fantasy with a very small f too, because it's very gritty. It's great to rip off for D&D stuff, and that's what we used to use it back in the day, because the maps were excellent, the fortresses and the nations and all the heraldry and stuff was really great. Awesome covers for their books too.
I'm going to say this much: it really depends, and I think this is the problem with 5e. This is why when they talk about it, I'm like, this is why they should put a second Dungeon Master guide and called it the Advanced Game Master for expert players.
Hey,
players still wouldn't read it.
Third edition did have a DMG too.
Yeah, well, no. My point is the game we spent most of us select over to Advanced D&D because we felt it was somehow cooler and better than basic.
So dumb.
Yeah. Well, that's my point. Is it's to suck in those others like, oh, you're gonna be a hardcore 5e player, like, okay, and you bring out the wilderness adventure stuff. I mean, to be fair, that was really cool. If you look at the Dungeon Master's Guide, the original, is the travel, the disease. It puts it much more gritty. Yes, it puts a lot more, but man, I like the feel of things being far. I like, oh, okay, how far can you travel? You can travel 10 miles in a day. A military can do that if you actually look at what Alexander.
Yeah, I actually try to stick to realistic world analogs of distances between villages and towns. I actually looked it up, and it's actually pretty cool. I mean, how far towns and villages are.
Usually about a day's walking.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
that also is like the big towns, like the big central market towns and stuff, tend to be further apart because usually it's you go to the
big cities are spread out, but the small farmer towns are like one day away from each other.
And so when they're not that far away, it's really bad because
geography degree, the Cristalla model.
Well, but like I said,
it's called the Cristalla model. It's about how settlements are or naturally lay themselves out according to requirements.
Here's one I want to know.
Society.
Well,
going back to the demi-human thing, do people actually use proximity to demi-humans to affect the local economies and stuff of their settings? Like not in a hardcore like Bean County spreadsheety kind of way.
Look, I played in a campaign in college where the GM was so stingy with everything. We found rope once. It wasn't magic rope. It was just rope. And we fucking rope dance because we had rope finally. We were so excited. So I have a real aversion to hyper realistic,
I'm not even hardcore
D&D because it's like, man, this asshole can wiggle his fingers and fire comes out. Can we relax on the plague?
It's not even going that way. I was just like, for example, in my game, because dwarves in the area are relatively prevalent, none of the villages in the main area that we're playing has a non-dwarven smith, because the dwarves kind of have it locked up because nobody can smith as well as they can, and that everybody's got to buy the metal from the dwarves anyways. So we had a player who was like, I have blacksmithing skills. I'm like, okay, good luck finding work.
Well, I think
I heard you was opening up a forge.
The one exception is a guy who's a half ogre, so he kind of
Well, no, you're looking the wrong way for blacksmith. Who's going to do the horseshoes and stuff? Because dwarves don't ride horses. Those are certain aspects for those things. But I think the other part is when you're starting to look at these, it should affect where are you getting your trading from? Oh, look, these are superior quality weapons coming through here. But I really wish, and again, I wish they had a rarity system in there. These are scarce, and you can't find these in certain, like in Small Village, will not have these items. You're not going to find silk. You're not going to find a silk merchant in Small Village.
It's easy enough to do that for yourself, though, to cater your campaign.
Well, but I'm saying I wish that they had it broken apart because that would make.
There's somebody. Oh, good. Sorry.
But what you're saying, Omanal, and I get it, is you wish there was a better DMG that told DMs how to run a world better from what you're talking about, as opposed to making it rules going, look, this is how shit should be, unless you want to not make it like that, but this is how the default should be, and then you can go away from it. It's like cartooning, and this is the best example I can give you. If someone does not understand the basic anatomy of a human being, they cannot cartoon well, because they will fuck up the exaggerations and things won't look in proportion. But when you watch a cartoon that's well done, your eye doesn't go, oh, Uncanny Valley, that doesn't look like a human. Your brain goes, that looks like a human, because the person understood anatomy and then was able to exaggerate it properly. Same thing for what we're saying here, which is if you say this is the basics of how a medieval society would function, these are the things that would be going on around it. Here's the core skeleton. Understand this. Now you can start breaking it off and doing weird things and going in interesting directions with it.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
By the way, Omanal,
I don't need any more goddamn books to tell me how to do DM. I don't need any more goddamn books to tell me how to make traps. I need a book that tells me realistic, serious world building.
Because if you've got the groundwork laid out for you, it is easier then to improvise and bolt the things on top of it while keeping it remaining solid underneath.
Okay, I'm going to bring this up.
Harvesting of Vikings next to Arabs. Just saying.
Well, I'm going to say this much: is anyone that remembers the old second edition books where they had the catacombs, the castles? Those I thought were excellent books for DMs. I wish that they would do that again. Instead, to be fair, WotC is really expecting someone else to do that. I was like, oh, and to be fair, you can probably go back to the second edition and grab that stuff out of there anyway.
Oh, of course you could.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Nice to see someone do it new and update it with modern layout and modern design, so that the new people coming in would have an easy resource to get a hold of at that point.
Yep. Is John going to pull it out?
I've been trying to find this thing, but somebody did do a good supplement. It's meant for 5e, but you could use it for any fantasy game. It breaks down what you can find in what civilization level. So like a town will have this, a city will have this, a village will have this in 5e.
If you remember what it is,
I love those books.
I'd like to know what that is.
I will
I knock it, but
actually I'll step away real quick because I know where my print copy is, and then I can get you the name.
Okay.
Guys, I'm going to tap out now. I've got a friend coming by. He's going to be here in about 5 minutes. So,
I know John's turning into a pumpkin soon.
Yeah, John's backing out soon anyway. But I'll let you finish your thing. Anyway, good night, everyone. We'll chat real soon.
Good night.
Cheers, mate.
Actually, I got to go drain myself as well, and then I got to prepare for my live stream tonight. So,
and I need to go swimming. So
sorry, Jim Cody, you have turned up just as we are about to wrap up. We've been going 3 hours. So I want to, if you want to shill your channel before you go, I'll shill for Mage.
For me, real fast, guys. Tonight I've got our weekly 4-Color Cafe. The first half hour, we're going to have Grant from Columbia Games on talking about Harn and the new Kickstarter they just finished and what they're doing with that. I don't think we're having a review tonight. And then it's just going to be talking about DMing stuff and what kind of DMing we do, and it's going to be fun.
Cool.
Anyone else?
Elfback, do you want to shill? Elfback, do you want to shill?
Yeah, watch my channel.
What did he say? Sorry, I missed that. What?
Yeah, watch my channel. That's my channel.
What's your channel?
The product I was talking about, by the way, is just simply titled Dungeons and Dragons Shops, and the writer is allow me to get really old for a second.
Indeed.
David Diaz
on DIAS.
Drive-through RPG. Yep. He's
got
guys,
I gotta go. My bladder's gonna burst. Take it
easy.
Bye. Peace, love, geek.
Well, John, no, I think those are great showing those books off. Those were fun to read, and it really helped understand what was going in there. And I really wish they would do more of that stuff, but it seems like because they already have it, why don't you just grab the original material and say, okay, here you go update it. And I think that'd be an awesome addition.
I mean,
as much as they got for all the Splat books, there was so much good stuff in there.
There was as much good as there was bad. That's the thing. You've got to be very selective with it.
I think the problem was that they kept bringing out more and more, so it went from going very good to just feeling like they're just, oh, I'm just throwing this out there to, get more money. And it just became too much instead of saying, okay, here's our core books that are really good to take. Which is why I think the first edition books, the hardback cover, I thought were fantastic. Greyhawk was kind of weak, but the rest of them
Grumpy
were
Old Slan, they wouldn't have to hire an intern anymore. They can just have AI do it. They would just have to submit the entire text of one of those books and say to reformat this as a fifth edition book, and AI would spit it out.
Oh God, that'd be a horrible book.
Well, no. I'm saying if they're taking the exact text and just having it reformat, because I have had AI go. I've experimented with it myself. Gone in and said, make me an Aztec army list for 3rd edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle, including stat blocks in the style of such and such, and it spat it out perfectly formatted. I've actually told it abstract things like, make me an Empire hero who has a missile attack and a special resistance against magic, and it'll actually conjure it out. So it's pretty good, and that's just with the free stuff without the ability to actually input stuff. So if WotC really wanted to, it would be as easy as AI.
Well, apparently they don't really care about that because they're going to be doing AI for the Dungeon Master, but they're not going to try and make it.
They keep saying they're doing AI. It's going to more than likely just be a simple AI as an option for people who don't have a Dungeon Master.
Well, right. Well, yeah. But what I'm saying is, but they're putting enough money into it where it actually makes it feasible for them to do a real AI aspect. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, talk to Nansorian's commented, DMG's just got worse in every edition. I don't agree.
5th edition DMG is actually really good.
The 5e one is fantastic. It's just poorly laid out. I have to agree with what WotC said.
And everybody ignores it.
The first edition Dungeon Master's Guide, obviously, is the greatest RPG book ever written. The 2nd edition Dungeon Master's Guide was dry, lacked a lot of the stuff. Yes, it was easier to read, but I didn't find it remotely inspiring. As a manual, it's probably better. As a resource, no. I didn't own any of the 3rd or 4th edition Dungeon Master's Guides. I heard mixed things about them. The 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, as people have said, is actually a really, really good book. But as Omanal said, it's not well laid out. As Elf Bait has also said, and we've all said, people just don't use it. There's a lot of things in there that people that I've heard instances of players going up in arms when DMs have tried using some of the optional rules from it, which is sad because it's full of a lot of good stuff. It's actually a really good book. It's the best one since the original AD&D DM's Guide, in my opinion.
If they'd done the world building at the end rather than the beginning, where everyone's interested in the world, that would. But the optional rules, the problem, like you said, is my normie friend, which is the one I use as my basis. His players, including his wife, completely rebelled, and he's getting kind of bored of 5e because he wants the more gritty aspect. And
those options are in there. All those options are in there.
I will say,
but the players won't let him use them. Is the point?
As wonderful as the original DMG was, let's be honest, it's half of that amazing. Half of its coolness is just in the sheer volume of what it has.
Yes.
Because it is just an absolute info dump from Gygax. It's got a lot of useful systems in there, but it's also a mound of text that is it's nearly impenetrable.
Its organization is notoriously abysmal.
I mean, there are things in there I never knew and still don't know are in there because I'm not going to sit there and read that thing cover to cover. I just can't.
Well, here's the other part too: is if you look at the modern one, they use what 11 or 12 font in the books. That was using like an 8 font. It's a small font, so when it's a 256 page
books
book,
did. I mean,
I know, but my point is, it's a 256 page book that if you did in modern day for all of the text that's in there would be about 400 or 500 pages.
Be as thick as some of the Goodman Games books.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Bigger, yeah.
I mean, that's just a DMG. We aren't people, and that's one of the 3 books you had to have.
Yes. And there was, in comparison to today's books, the percentage of text to art as well. Mm-hmm. There was so much more. I reckon it would be pushing 8. If you're using current sort of publishing standards in terms of art and text size, whatever, you'd be pushing nearly 1,000 pages.
Yeah,
I'm
it
not
would
sure
have
if
to
it'd
be a
1,000, but it
multi-volume
would definitely
set.
be, it would definitely be a exalted size 600 plus page book.
What they need to do is they just need to come out with the Encyclopedia Gygaxia as your DMG. It's like Volume 1, World Building, Volume 2, Optional Rules, Volume 3, and it could be like a bookcase edition like that thick.
Well, wait a minute. But 2E did that. John just showed it. The Arms Guide. That's what it was supposed to be for that.
Yes.
And that
exactly.
helped out in there. And in fact, those were better laid out books, because when I bought the Castle book, I was like, oh, this is what this looks like. Oh, this is what this
Arms
looks
book
like.
was great because it would give you a sample picture of the armor. It would give you some historical text. It even had like little subsections on this is what you would have. This is what would be available in a Bronze Age setting versus a medieval setting versus a Renaissance setting. So it allowed you to work in different historical periods, or if you're doing like a traditional D&D world, like Greyhawk or Mystara, I'm gonna trot over from my medieval England into my Bronze Age Egypt.
Well, but nowadays it's not as big deal. But before the internet, that was awesome. But look at it. You get the campaign source book and catacomb guide. Oh, that tells me how to create it. You get the castle guide for when they want to play the domain levels. So arms and equipment, monster mythology, creative campaigning, the book of village, which I never got, the complete book of necromancers, but sages and special, then ships of the sea. You like, oh, okay.
Yeah, there's just so much that you could just pull out of there and use for anything. Of course, when Spelljammer came around, and you could look into the ships of the sea and say, okay, well, I want my old trireme to get a Spelljammer helm and go into space. One of the best ships in there was the one that's just a regular ship with a Spelljammer helm, because you could land on a planet and just, as long as it had an ocean.
But they gave a lot of this advice in there. But I think that's one of the things that's been missing from the newer one is, and to be fair, is they're trying to sell adventures more than they're trying to sell adventures and players' handbooks, rather than trying to actually give something for the DM to say, oh, I'm going to be creative, and that's,
which is funny, because there's this big cry because there aren't enough DMs, and if they're not doing anything to fix that, because the reason you don't have a lot of DMs is because there's this weird misconception that DMing is hard. One of my big goals when I originally started my channel back in the day was I wanted to get on there and just shout from the rooftops that it's not hard. It's literally as easy as just coming up with a dumb idea, sitting down and running your friends through it. They're never going to complain. It could be the stupidest thing that you just ripped off from the most recent episode of He-Man, because trust me, I've done it.
Well, I think I agree with you on that. I know that John's got to go at some point here, but I do. But I fully agree. I would love to see more for that. But then again, to be fair, Wizards of the Coast is moving away from trying to get a DM. When they said 20% of their players, which I'm including a DM, were buying like 80% of the books. I'm like, yes, those are the DMs buying it. Give the DMs more stuff to work with, and you'll find it'll do better. But they wanted to keep selling everything to players. I said, well, that works out okay, but everyone gets fatigued from that. And it's like, well, what they want to do is they want the social aspect. And I think that's the one thing that they're missing, even when they go online, is as much as we're talking here, I still would rather play with my friends face to face than go.
Absolutely.
I'm still super bummed that I can't participate in my brother's in-person game.
Right. I need to answer what Slan. Yes, Friday will be the Dracula again. We're moving into the third session of the Dracula book. Poor old Jonathan Harker is absolutely obliterated at the moment, and we're hoping for a break. But will a break for him be forthcoming? I can see him dying of fear and fright and panic very, very soon. But so I'll be streaming on Friday night for my Fighting Fantasy / Choose Your Own Adventure game, and we are reading Dracula: Curse of the Vampire by Jonathan Green, which is a superb book, really, really good. I'm gonna have to call it now. Thank you, Elfbait, and thank you, Omen Owl, for staying with me to the end. Thank you, Doof for dropping in earlier. Mage's Musings was here with us here right up until midnight. Then he was called away by his game. Check out Mage's Musings channel. Check for review caps and little tidbits on all sorts of rules. Always very entertaining. Check out Elfbait's channel. We've been having some discussions on that. I've not been able to drop in as a contributor in this manner. I'm usually in the chat because
because I do mine on Sundays.
And I have to work. And I have to work on Sundays.
One thing I didn't show earlier is I did start a project on the Elfbait, if I can even pronounce my own channel, Elfbait Discord, where I'm trying to do a like community dungeon build using just the monsters out of the Fiend Folio.
Okay.
And so it's good. I've put it in a thread. I'm gonna post the rooms that I'm gonna start mapping the dungeon as I do it in Dungeon Draft. And so people are. I've got the entry room posted now. So go through your old 1E Fiend Folios if you've got them, and suggest your encounters, and then we'll build the dungeon that way.
Excellent. That should be a bit of fun.
Oh, Kitrid columns are awesome because I love the whole idea of just having the
Get
columns
in there, man.
Get in there and help out. And of course, Bear joined us for a good portion of the stream. He does lots of stuff on his channel, mostly chats, interviews with people, and this type of chat as well. He has the four color cafe, I believe he calls it. He's always at an awkward time for me, unfortunately. I do catch up on it while I'm at work the day after. So thank you everybody for joining in as always. If you want to play games with us, we play on the Discord. I'm running Call of Cthulhu every Thursday night at the moment, and we have rotating games on Saturdays.
I gotta bounce up.
All right, cheers. We have rotating games on Saturdays. One Saturday we'll have some OSC, the next Saturday we'll have some MERP, and we're talking about having some more OSC at other times with other DMs. We potentially got 4 or 5 DMs running different parts of the world, different sessions, and lots of people have joined in so far. We're getting a decent turnout to almost all the sessions. Obviously, it depends. It's a relaxed, laid back game. So drop in, drop out, play whenever you want to. There's no sort of expectation. Just join in. There is an events tab in there which you can register your interest. So have a look in the events tab to see what's coming up.
And I'm going to shill for John here. So if you get to play Call of Cthulhu with John, you'll thoroughly enjoy it. And if you get to play with Gingerbeard, then it's just going to be hilarious no matter what you're doing there. So
cheers, Omanel. Thanks for the confidence boost. I will say that much as I always ran D&D, I think running Call of Cthulhu is my calling in terms of running games, in terms of what suits the way I run things. It does seem to suit my DMing style, and the more I mature in the way I run games, the more Call of Cthulhu feels more natural to the way I like to run things. But everybody's departing now from chat, so I think it is a good time to bring this to a close. Thank you, everybody in chat, for taking part. Thank you for having a good old discussion, and I'll see you again soon. Night all.